Marci, please, girl.
A conversation is free-flowing. That means it goes back and forth.
Okay, well, I'll just talk over you when you keep monologuing.
We're doing all right. Hey.
This is what she does to other people.
I have barely talked in this, Marci. I would really love you to share with the mic a little bit.
All right, so
I mean, I'm going to sort through all the disinformation you said and pick out what I can agree with.
It's not disinformation, Marci.
Marci is like trolling Brianna at this point.
They put all of us together like this giant soup and try to draw conclusions with it. It is.
I think I know what she's talking about, and I think she's actually right about this. No. Anyway, so we're going to watch the debate between Marci Bowers and Brianna Wu. We all know who both of those people are. It's going to be hard to tell from the off who I'm going to agree with. It probably isn't, actually. I'm probably going to be much more on the side of Brianna Wu than on the side of Marci Bowers, because Brianna Wu says some stuff I agree with. That doesn't mean that I'm a fan of her. But yeah, so we've got a bit of a essay right here. We'll just kind of skip through a bit. Brianna Wu is a political commentator and trans rights activist. Ooh, being called a TRA, ouch. She is the executive director of the Progressive Rebellion PAC. Dr. Marci Bowers is a pelvic and gynecological surgeon with more than 3 decades of experience in healthcare. Dr. Bowers was most recently the president of WPATH. She was the organization's first transgender president. So they're going to be talking about gender-affirming care and trans rights experts, because Brianna Wu is an expert in anything whatsoever. But yeah, let's see what's going to happen. Who knows?
all right.
What's that music? Couldn't pay for people that can play in time with each other, I guess. Anyway.
All right.
And actually, before we start, I have a suggestion. Can we, just talking today, I know there's some disagreements. Can we assume good intent for everyone on this call today? I think all of us are trying to get to the right answers, even if we
Can't we take this as read? Why do we need to do this?
don't agree on what those are right now. I would love for us to feel that way.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been my attitude for decades, is that I think we need to talk more to people. I come from a small
Yep, we need to have more conversations. Wow. Never heard that before. Will they mention the WPATH files? I don't know. Find out, I guess.
town in the Midwest. And there's a lot of good people in this country.
Of course there are.
And the reason why trans care was a lightning rod for division and contentiousness is the fact that people just don't know. They don't know.
Agree.
They don't understand the biology. They believe what they're told, maybe, or they are fearful of what they don't know.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's also a human story, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, well, that was a perfect transition. We've never really done like kind of a live rolling start before, but I feel like, Marci, that was a really nice way to kick us off. So, thank you both for being here.
Of course.
This is a fraught time for everyone, and particularly for trans people. It's obviously a deeply difficult time, and I am excited to have you both here and be able to learn from both of you and have a really good faith conversation. So with that, it would be helpful to build on what Marci was saying and just get a little context for like why you're here, why the trans rights movement is important to you, why you care, and just create a little context for our listeners. So I'll start. Brianna, you want to jump in?
I would love to. First of all, can I call you Marci today,
Absolutely.
or do you prefer Dr. Bowers? So Marci, I want to start by telling you a story I remember from when you did my vaginoplasty, which was 18 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And this, I think, really illustrates who you are as a person. And first of all, before I tell this story, 18 years, not a single problem, no stenosis.
So we're sucking up already. How nice. This is what Wu does.
No anything. It functions perfectly. top of the line, no complaints whatsoever. Thank you so much. I've been married for 17 years now, and your surgery was not a small part of why that was able to happen. So thank you very much. I doubt you remember this because you've just had so many patients, but there was when you did my surgery, there was a trans girl in our unit, older, was clearly going to have trouble passing. And the nurses in Trinidad, I know you saw this firsthand, were not always kind to the patients as we were going through. I would actually sit there at night and listen to them mocking us through the door, which was really unsettling.
Terrible. Yeah.
You think she'd be used to that, but hey.
And I don't know if you remember this. There was a girl that really had a bad reaction after surgery and couldn't walk, and the nurses were ordered to help her. And she got up on her own, and she found she broke 2 of her front teeth, on the floor. 2 of her front teeth, smashed them on the floor. And you came in the next day and you raised holy hell in a way I've never seen a doctor advocate for a patient before. It was like she, Rambo, came into that unit and was reading scripture about how patients were supposed to be treated and what you expected when you gave orders about helping someone who was having trouble. And I remember just being in awe because, first of all, you were the first trans woman.
Oh, she's such a suck up. When do we get to like anything? I'm just going to speed this up a bit because Jesus fucking Christ. Hi, Blackie Cat. I hope you're good.
I'd ever met with FFS, so you were beautiful. And I remember thinking like how on your game you were. It was truly inspiring. Like as I went through my career and had to learn how to lead things as a woman, I thought of that moment many times. Wow. So when you were put in charge of WPATH, you were like my ideal person. I was so psyched for it. I saw the integrity you had in that moment, and I assumed it would be carried over to WPATH. And I want to say this with respect, but I do have.
Oh, is Marcy Bowers one of the ones that left their family behind? Classy, nice.
Extreme concerns about the SOC8 and what I see as a very political direction that our healthcare has taken, which I don't think is backed up by the science. And that's, Alex, you asked why I'm here today. That's why I'm here today. Like, I really believe in you, but I also think we've gotten off path. So does that make sense to you? Do you know where I'm coming from?
Sure. Although, if you look at WPATH as a scientific document, which WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, is like any other major medical organization. It can have legal personnel, psychologists, therapists. So it has a broader base of membership, but it is.
Oh, the 1 HP voice already. You'd think that'd be coming from Woo. Woo's voice actually sounds a bit stronger.
It's very much as scientific as the AMA or the APA or other major, the Endocrine Society, American Society of Plastic Surgery. It is science driven and driven by the best available evidence. If you look at the SOC8 compared to the SOC7, the SOC7 was about 65 pages. The SOC8 is 240 something pages. And the amount of research that is presented and referenced in that is staggering. So are there holes in the evidence or areas that are not yet completed? Sure, as there is in any field. But the intent and the integrity of the science is there. You can kick the rugs and find, again, little omissions anywhere you look in any organization. But I actually would argue that WPATH does it rather well. And its membership has also changed in that it founded in 1979. It was largely considered a group of cisgender, mostly white Europeans, making these guidelines for the healthcare of trans persons. And over time, we now there's 43 countries represented, more than 4,500 members. And we're increasingly diverse with more trans people now in the organization and even some in leadership, including myself, which is a bit staggering in that WPATH had never had, since 1979, never had a woman with trans history as its president.
You were the first.
Woman with trans history. Interesting.
I was the first.
And you served as president from 2022 to just
2024,
recently,
2 years.
A 2-year term. And it's not a full-time role.
No, it's not paid. None of the positions are paid.
Really? That's very surprising.
No.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. I do want to take issue because I don't share your appraisal that WPATH is informed by the science in multiple areas. I think this is largely what I think the problem is. I think, Marci, I think people like you and I are a very old phenomenon, right? Boys that desperately want to be girls. Like you can go back 4,000 years and see us, right? Like we were in Roman times, we were there, right? I think what has happened is
back to the time of Jesus, eunuch.
SOC8 sites a castration fetish porn site. Have a quick look. Major surgeries. I don't know if don't know where I'd find that. Ideologically driven language. Focus on irreversible surgery. Oh yeah, eunuchs. All this stuff about eunuchs. Assigned male at birth and wish to eliminate masculine physical features or genitals, which has got nothing to do with transgender. These people aren't trans. Like, that's bizarre, weird.
100%.
There's references of eunuchs in the Bible, which
well, we'll get into that. We'll get into.
Yeah, so because there's references to eunuchs in the Bible, what are you talking about?
We were there, right? I think what has happened
back
is
to the time
the case
of Jesus.
for us.
I mean, eunuchs.
100%.
There's references of eunuchs in the Bible, which
well, we'll get into that.
What has that got to do with why you're talking about eunuchs in your SOC? Weird.
Get into that. But I think the science, I think the original protocols were clearly based on people like you and I. And I think, generally speaking, the SOC, particularly since the SOC 7, has radically expanded the mission in a way that there's, frankly, no science to justify. I want to give you 4 examples of things I don't think the science is there for. The first is the eunuchs chapter, which I'm sure we'll get into. The second is non-binary healthcare. We are taking literal teenagers who do not fit the criteria for gender dysphoria in the DSM-5, and we are giving them low dosage of testosterone, which is utterly...
Like, it's a bit odd. Why do we have to go to, like, non-binary healthcare to criticize, like, giving children, like, puberty blockers and stuff like that? Isn't that far worse than just, like, non-binary shit? I don't know. Brianna Wu, I think she's certainly one of those people that likes to push on the non-binary thing. Oh well, it's not us transes, it's the non-binaries. It's a bit sus in my opinion.
There's no study to show this works. There's no clinical protocol to even identify a non-binary person.
Like there's little evidence. There's no protocol to identify a child who's going to continue with their dysphoria, let alone who's non-binary and who isn't.
I think you can find there's actually quite a bit of information out, and especially emerging information in a variety of countries, too, some of which have been maligned as being against this sort of care, which, in fact, from knowing people on the ground in Sweden and the UK, there's some...
Yeah, like the eunuch thing, it kind of makes you think of, like, what is it, body integrity identity disorder. Those people that want, like, a limb removed because they don't like identify as having 2 arms or some shit. And generally the way people feel is like, well, maybe we shouldn't be just cutting people's arms off because that's what they say they want. But it kind of seems like, oh, a man wants his dick taken off. You just do it? Like, really? What's it? WPATH recommends the castration of boys. Yeah, castration of eunuchs is recommended. Ages 34 to 36. I'm sure I can find it fairly easily. Oh, you have to, like, do some other shit, but I don't know. Why are eunuchs involved? This is about trans. Well, Professional Association with Transgender Health, and the T in WPATH is a different color. What have eunuchs got to do with being trans? Okay, I've had this open previously.
I would disagree.
Brianna, why don't you list the other 2?
Yeah,
I've got them down here, and then we'll kind of go through them.
Yeah.
I want to take our time and make sure we have time to really go in depth into each of these claims. So list the other 2, and then we'll go through.
Well, so the third one would be female to male transsexuals, which there is not the same level of evidence for people like us for. The pathology is different, the risks of hormones are different, the surgery is different, the detransition rates are different. It seems very clear to me this is a different population, and the treatments are largely conflated. And the fourth one is the spiciest, which is children, underage transitions for minors, something that I am in favor of in some form. But I think that, clearly there have been lawsuits, including the Tennessee lawsuit, that have felt that WPATH has not been straightforward about the science with minors.
If I could just interject one thing, though, that's very important in any discussion of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's very important not to inject anecdote as being a prescription for how medicine should be delivered. This is true in any field. Yeah. And that's especially true. So when you isolate and you pick out someone who so-called detransitions or retransitions back to their former gender, those cases are very...
Globally, TJD people encompass a diverse array of gender identities, expressions, different needs for gender-affirming care across their lifespan, blah, blah, blah. When standards of care are absent for certain groups, the vacuum can result in multiplicity of therapeutic approaches. I don't know, it doesn't seem
You're
hugely
anti-trans.
Hey. Thank you, November Alley, for following. Thank you. Including those that might be counterproductive or harmful. The SOC8 includes recommendations to promote health and well-being for gender-diverse people that have often been neglected, marginalized, including non-binary people, eunuch, and intersex individuals. I guess eunuch is a trans identity now. Like really, bro? Really?
It's especially true. So when you isolate and you pick out someone who so-called detransitions or...
Well, I mean, you kind of have to an extent. There's not all that much data on detransition. Is she playing on the idea that because there's only so many studies and so on, I can just brush it under the carpet and just accuse you of anecdotal evidence? I don't know, man.
Or retransitions back to their former gender. Those cases are very isolated.
Retransitions back to their former... Everything has to have its own weird terminology with this person.
And they're of course they've been run up the flagpole as being symbolic of the entire movement and indictment of the entire process of care. But if you look at the vast majority of individuals who have undergone treatment, including adolescents, their rates of satisfaction, psychosocial improvement, performance in school. I'm on the front line. I see patients. I see these families come in, and it's really quite dramatic. So again,
I mean, how much does this person see of any of her patients years and years afterwards, And we've had a study recently. There was something like a 12-point-something% increase in people who had depression post-op as opposed to pre-op.
The isolated case reports of dissatisfaction with care, those are isolated and should be set aside. And even some who have been championed as being detransitioners don't doubt the accuracy of the diagnoses even, but that the fact that their own personal situation has changed in some way. But there's no question. I do want to agree with you that this is a very, very important age group. And what we did for implementing puberty blockers, for example, before the onset of puberty, a lot of that was, there were very limited studies, and this was mainly an extra.
Who looks like they dissociate every 5 seconds. Yeah, they're being constantly pulsed or something to keep awake, to keep moving. Crazy.
Well, I shouldn't say mainly. There was some extrapolation from adult data that showed clear efficacy over decades, and with the presumption that if it could be instituted prior to the onset of puberty, that it made sense that it would be as efficacious. And in many studies, that actually is true.
Wait, that doesn't sound very scientific. It sounds a bit...
Decades. And with the presumption that if it could be instituted prior to the onset of puberty, that it made sense that it would be as efficacious. And in many studies, that actually...
It makes it sound like you don't know what you're doing at all.
Is true. But long-term longitudinal studies of trans youth who receive blockers, we have not followed them yet into adulthood, primarily because a lot...
So it's still experimental, is it? Glad we're admitting that, Jesus.
A lot of them are just coming of age.
Right. So I heard you say 2 things there. You were talking about the detransitioners, which are in the FTM.
Yep. I hope none of those kids want kids of their own one day.
Age.
Right. So I heard you say two things there. You were talking about the detransitioners, which are in the FTM category, and then you started talking about puberty blockers. So I want to really say, I think every one of these things deserves to be drilled down into rather than us kind of wandering around. So just 1 second. I would like to start by talking about the detransition rates. So what I heard you say, and I just want to make sure I got this, is it's your view that we would probably agree that there's a political project to amplify these stories and to put cameras in their faces and to make people think it's a crisis. But at the same time, is it your contention that there is not a problem with the rates of female to male transsexuals, particularly children, detransitioning?
There's not appreciable differences between transmasculine and transfeminine detransition rates. No, I mean, there was a...
True? I mean, this is saying otherwise. This is saying rates were higher in trans women than trans men. I mean, Brianna's kind of suggesting the opposite. I guess it depends where you look to an extent. The higher in transgender women than transgender men. Why there's seemingly so many more FTMD trans. I mean, I could see why there'd be more of them because there's like that the FTM cohort kind of shot past the MTF cohort. Trans women more common than trans men. We're getting brutally wooed today. She did some wooing at the start, and now they're actually arguing, which is nice. Yeah, like the age is higher in MTFs in general. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Is there a... It really feels like there's not very much data around this kind of shit. Like, what is this saying? Accurate transition regret and detransition rates are unknown. That is very true. One of the problems is plenty of the time when someone detransitions, they won't even like do it through the gender clinic. They'll just fuck off. So yeah, it's very difficult to get reliable data on detrans in the first place.
Differences between transmasculine and transfeminine detransition rates. No, I mean, there was a...
I don't know if she knows enough to say that, to be honest.
A large study, combined Canadian-US study, Kinnan McKinnon. It is not yet published, I don't believe, but he was the author and presented that. And there were several hundred in each camp that were presented at the last WPATH meeting. And it was really staggering to see how this is a trans man who was looking in at detransition rates. And they were, there weren't many. Again, these numbers are usually about 1% of persons, but it was quite clear that that the factors that went into detransition decisions were complicated.
Oh, is it going to get exciting? Right now, it's kind of, I don't know. I would like to see Wu kind of holding Marci Bowers a bit more to task, but she's very wishy-washy.
Them were actually about 2/3 of them were actually external. So
at the moment, she's really kind of letting just like Marci Bowers just rattle off all this kind of shit. It's very difficult to really affirm one way or the other. Like we're talking about detransition rates when detransition rates are poorly understood at best. So, in
other words, it was their acceptance in society. It was pressure from family. Those sorts of things, difficulty getting employment. Those were the issues that really factored into why they decided to suspend their transition-related care.
His study, I just want to jump in, Marci. His study puts it between 5 and 10%, Kinnan McKinnon. So just, that's obviously quite different than the 1%.
I don't have the details of the study, but one of the things that
Did she say it hasn't been published yet? Between 5 and 10%. I think that still seems low to me, but to be fair, I am very much spitballing. Healthcare experiences of patients discontinuing. Yeah, I don't think it's out there yet.
Have pointed out is that one of the reasons we may be seeing more detransition now, or change, it's even change in transition, so it's a change in their gender-related goals, is that for too long, we as providers provided our patients a very binary model. So it was very either or. It was, if you're not male, oh, then you must be female. And if you weren't female, then you must be male. And I think that
the problem is your sex doesn't change. If they aren't female, they must be, well, they're still male. They just want to change their gender traits because they want to be treated a certain way. They want to be regarded a certain way in society. It's a bit frightening. This person used to be the head of WPATH. The way they talk about sex, it's very confusing.
Not male, oh, then you must be female. And if you weren't female, then you must be male. And I think that strict adherence to a binary on the part of providers also put people they painted them into gender corners that maybe they might not otherwise have chosen. In fact, that if you look at those individual stories.
I don't even know if I agree with this that much. I think probably most people do want to be the other sex to what they are. You get plenty that eventually they realize how unrealistic all of that is and settle for some kind of midpoint because they still don't want to go around identifying as their birth sex or whatever. But hey.
Many of them just felt that they weren't really as, they would, if you look at gender as a spectrum from 1 to 10, rather than everybody being 1s or 10s.
Yeah, because it's like, if you're not female, you're male. If you're not male, you're female. But now we're talking about gender. The way these terms get mixed up so much is so confusing.
There were a lot of those patients that might have felt that they were more like a 4. So putting that through the mill of a binary system that wants to make you either male or female, and that's it. That number needs to be parsed out. And there's no question that WPATH and many of the persons active in the field are trying to tease that out so that we are doing a better job of identifying who does this really work for, and make sure that we're really addressing the true needs of patients and not the needs of, to put it bluntly, surgeons and care providers.
Sure. But Marci, if I could just interject here. So two things in response to what you just said. I have a different theory about.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping the shouting starts soon. At the moment, Brianna kind of makes a half statement and then Marci goes off on one of her, what sound like marketing fucking guff, whatever.
About FTMs. Because I think 10 years ago, I really just assumed they were like us, like girls that wanted to be boys from a very young age. And I think if you get out there and you really study the pathology, they're just not. They're not.
I don't understand this. You're making such a distinction.
Hold on,
like this.
I let you talk.
It doesn't really.
Yeah, she interrupts a heck of a lot. I'm feeling Woo's frustration here. We return to play less than 10 seconds. Pause. Move however your face, play, repeat. Okay, it's good to see you, Atom Ale. If you don't like me, you don't actually have to watch me, believe it or not.
From a very young age. And I think if you get out there and you really study the pathology, they're just not. They're not.
I don't understand this. You're making such a distinction.
Wait, is she even, what is she trying to say here?
Project here. So two things in response to what you just said. I have a different theory about FTMs. Because I think 10 years ago, I really just assumed they were like us, like girls that wanted to be boys from a very young age. And I think if you get out there and you really study the pathology, they're just not. They're not.
I don't understand this. You're making.
Yeah, she's not really letting, Marci is cutting her off an awful lot.
Such a distinction.
Hold on, I let you talk.
It doesn't really fit with that. I mean, I want to hear you more.
Sure.
I want to hear why you think that.
Yeah.
I want to hear you. Shut up and listen.
Sure. So I think that the pathology is very, very different from them. I think it's understudied. I think that the vast majority of the studies that the original Benjamins were built on were on people like you and I. And I think that respectfully, look, I'm a Democrat. I vote Democrat. I worked my butt off for Kamala. But I think respectfully, WPATH is filled with people that have a very specific worldview on the left. And I think that with the best of intentions,
where are you hearing
hold
that?
on.
All over the place. Couldn't anyone that actually knows what they're doing, speak to this person? I'm not saying I would do better, but fuck me. Brianna Wu, that's who we're going to. That's who the disagreement wanted to hold Marci Bowers to task. Brianna Wu? Like, we start being like, well, WPATH is like further to the left than me. It's like, Jesus.
Can I please finish? Sure, thank you. I think with the best of intentions, we assume that the healthcare for female to males should be the exact same as male to females. And I don't think there's really strong evidence for that. Go look at the studies that y'all have. The evidence of every single part of female to male transition is less studied than we are. It's walking them down a certain path.
Let me present some evidence to just...
Even he's cutting her off. The problem is, she's not really making very coherent arguments. So it probably is kind of hard for these people to like, you stream when it's very late for me, so I can't sleep, I just drop in. Mute and play a drinking game. I take a shot out of your pause. Every time you pause, it move your bangs out your face. So, okay, fair enough. Listen, I'm glad to cause some entertainment for you, but make sure you hit like on the stream. I think that's the least you should do.
Sort of get in here for 1 second. So,
oh, poor baby.
I mean, there is a lot of transmasculine membership. And by the way, they should be referred to as transmasculine. I would say that F to M.
Word policing. Who fucking cares? Transmasculine, F to M, female to... Who gives a shit?
And M to F is old terminology.
So,
please go ahead, Alex.
I just want to create context for this because I think the context does matter. And the cast review is very clear on this data. And this is from England. It's harder to get data in the US. But, you know, there was from 20.
This is for you. You're gonna get very drunk today. I'm just gonna pause and like do this constantly now. That's at least one shot.
2010 to 2021, I think.
Take another shot. Take another shot, Atom.
It went from.
I could just do this all day. I could just make this completely unwatchable for everyone. Listen. My hair is still in my face. You're just gonna have to take shot after shot, I guess.
Like 15 people.
Anyway, I actually was not listening. Let's go.
Clear on this data, and this is from England. It's harder to get data in the US, but you know there was from 20.
Affected weirdo. I don't know if I knew that term. I've not heard of that before. Gonna get alcohol poisoning. Hope so. I don't hope so. Listen, I don't wish harm on you. I think you should like the stream, but apart from that, I don't honestly think much of you. I don't know what an affected weirdo means.
2010 to 2021, I think it went from.
As a crash on me, it happens. Hey, stranger things happen.
Like 15 people in the National Gender Clinic in England to like 3,000. And the vast majority of those people were transmasculine. I think it was over 2/3, close to 70%.
I see where you're going.
So I think it's just relevant, just contextually, to know that again, I was just looking at a gender clinic in Oregon had a 40x increase from 2013 to 21. And again, the majority are transmasculine. I think.
Hey, Atom. Are you thirsty? Are you thirsty right now? Just wondering.
That context really matters. It also, the cast review, and happy to dispute this, uses very specific language around the nature of when the onset of the dysphoria is. And they describe in transfeminine dysphoria, generally the onset is at an early age, and transmasculine dysphoria is generally in the teenage years. That is to me, a difference. I don't know what that means for the actual.
This is all. I can't disagree with any of what you're saying. Okay. And although I do take issue with the cast report, which was terrible.
We can get into that. Yeah, we have time.
I agree with it, but the cast review was bad. Okay, bro.
Politically motivated and really
politically motivated. Okay. Hillary Cass met with someone that knows Ron DeSantis or some shit. Politically motivated. Anything you don't like, you can just write off as politically motivated instead of bothering to engage with anything on his face, you know.
Not a very credible piece of opinion, but it does point out, any of these things you can learn from them. There are certain things, and one of the things that has troubled me as well is the shift that we had from what was.
Take a shot. I'm pausing again. I even moved my hair for you. If Chad Logic transitioned with the chaser become the chased, maybe. It depends what he looks like, I guess. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't mean to sound mean, but I don't know that I think that someone like Chad Logic would look amazing as a woman. And also, when it comes to like hair regrowth, your mileage kind of varies when you take like estrogen. You might find that it grows back some, like it fills out a bit, but it's still decently far back. And like if, for example, you have kind of a bit of recession on each side, like I do, it's not necessarily going to reverse that. So I don't know. I think you should be aware of that kind of thing, but hey.
Traditionally, we thought of that it was more of a, we saw more trans feminine persons presenting for care, and that ratio has completely flipped, where now 2/3 of individuals presenting to gender clinics.
Well, the other thing is maybe the estrogen will calm him down a bit, offset the finasteride rage. You never know.
Now are assigned female at birth, and I've asked different providers, pediatric specialists, Diane Ehrensaft, a very well-known psychologist, and I'm not sure I really have a satisfactory answer yet, but there's no...
Diane Ehrensaft. I remember Diane Ehrensaft. She was talking about like nonverbal, like ways that 2-year-olds can tell you they're actually trans.
Birth, and I've asked different providers, pediatric specialists, Diane Ehrensaft, a very well-known psychologist.
Yeah, very strange person, Diane Ehrensaft. Like, way stranger than this person.
And I'm not sure I really have a satisfactory answer yet, but there's no question that society has a problem with how girls are being, what their role models are, and how we are affirming them as emerging female beings on this planet. So, and I've heard, and of course I've heard anecdotes.
You know what? This is actually hilarious in a way. This is what Brianna Wu subjects people that talk to her with. It's just this like rambling, like fucking constant fucking barrage of nothing. And now she's getting a bit of it back. It's like that conversation she had with Queeman, but like the roles are reversed. And now anytime she wants to ask anything, she has to sit through a fucking God knows how long monologue. Like, it actually feels like time slows down when Marci Bowers talks. It's painful.
From the individuals themselves saying that, it wasn't so much that they wanted to be men, but they were jealous of the things that they felt men could have. And that's not really an identity issue. That is the demographic shift is one that really needs to be looked at.
I agree.
All that to say basically nothing. Well, it's something that needs to be looked at. Fuck me, man. This is actually painful. I hope it gets interesting soon. By the way, but take a shot. Hang on. You need to take a shot. I'm moving my hair again. My hair's in my face again. Oh no, you're gonna have to drink again.
What is the body image for young girls and women as they enter puberty? I have 2 daughters myself, so in my...
We talk about the body image stuff. Like, we've seen videos of these like young trans men. I just don't want to be a woman. I'm worried about how men might treat me and stuff like that. Like, I'm a man instead, I guess. I don't know.
My middle daughter, who's getting married this summer in Scotland, and has become decidedly feminine, by the way. But she really didn't like puberty. When she got breasts and she had to put a shirt on, she was not happy about it. And you might even have considered her to be a bit of a tomboy. But and then the older daughter was ashamed of her breasts and used to walk in a way that kind of covered up her emerging breast tissue. So, and that I was so surprised by that as someone who identified as female, that wouldn't be a proud feature of who they were. But this is the issue, and this is why in any of these standards, the process has to be slowed down. I agree. I'm not saying that
we're saying, are we not confirming that like gender fluidity or whatever is like very normal and natural? Who actually likes puberty? I have no idea. I don't know if I noticed my puberty much, but I was kind of oblivious in a lot of ways when I was younger. So
it hasn't been. Again, you have to be struck by how overwhelming the rates of success are.
To be fair, like, I can't imagine what would happen. Like if this person, one of their kids transitioned, I feel like that'd be a shit show.
If you look at breast augmentation in cisgender women, You look that up sometimes. Celebrity breast.
Brianna was nodding off then. Jesus Christ.
I mean, if you look at breast augmentation in cisgender women.
See that? This is the thing. At least I can watch Brianna woo.
You look that up sometimes. Celebrity breast. How many regret that surgery? Knee surgery, which is very difficult to get through.
Oh, fucking hell, man. We know very little about surgical regret. And here's the thing. If trans surgery regret is so low, and yet there's evidence that mental health worsens and suicide rates remain high even after suicide, isn't that a bit of a disconnect? Isn't that a bit concerning? Doesn't that suggest that some of the data might be a bit skewed, if you know what I mean? Like, very few people are regretting it, but at the same time it's not helping their mental health necessarily. Often, well, there's evidence that for some people it gets worse. And then the suicide rate is still high. To me, that does not stack up. Like, what's the suicide rate of people who've had knee surgery versus, like, trans people?
It has a 20% regret rate.
Yeah, I was really glad to be in the positive.
And does it have a 20% regret rate? It's been studied, presumably. Someone found that number. That doesn't mean that that's the overall regret rate. And it doesn't mean that the regret rate that we've cited for trans surgery is at all accurate. We just don't know. And almost all of this shit is brought up as, like, it's anecdotal evidence. It's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Testimonial. There we go. It's like testimonial. Do you regret your surgery? No. And half the time it's being asked of them way before any regret might set in. Because I'm pretty sure I read somewhere, like, typically if someone's going to start regretting their surgery, like their trans surgery, it's going to be like years and years after, like 8 to 10 years. Like there was a study. I might as well bring it up. When was it? Yeah, so it was this one. This was the one. I've shown this loads of times before. So what they found was, like, there was higher risk of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, substance use with surgery than without. And bear in mind, it's a decently high. It's a good sized cohort. You don't often get that with, like, trans studies. And I say that for things that tend to agree with my worldview. I say that about things that tend to disagree with my worldview. I can believe 20% regret rate. A lot of people that have orthopedic surgeries don't want to do the exercise after. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. You got work to do. You got to go through all this, like, physiotherapy and stuff like that. So is it a good comparison when after you get the knee surgery, you have to, like, relearn to walk, shit like that? It's going to be difficult. Not everyone's going to be, I'd rather just been fucking put in a wheelchair. Is there really a comparison with, like, trans? Especially when, like, a lot of vaginoplasties are going to be getting done on, like, older men who've probably already had kids anyway, you know. Those surgeries present this outcome. There wouldn't be a good reason to hold them until further data is collected. Well, yeah. But yeah, this is what I mean. So the regret rate is so low, but yet the risks for things like depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation go up. That's a bit suspicious. That doesn't really make very much sense. Kind of suggests that maybe people are saying it because of the time it's being done. That regret hasn't yet developed, or they feel like they should say a certain thing. They might not want to express any, like, niggling doubts they have because maybe that'll get used to restrict access in the future, stuff like that. You gotta wonder about these kind of things, but no one ever mentions them.
Positive category on that.
So we want to be better about it. We want to.
Might be a bit of sunk cost fallacy. Yeah. And if that's the case, it takes years and years to start getting out of that, for sure. Also, hi, November Alley. Hope you're good.
Get better about it, especially in young people that have their whole lives ahead. The worst thing we can do is prescribe a therapy that they're not going to be happy with.
Sure. So I would really appreciate, like, we
love the sound bites. Like, oh. On the one hand, it's funny watching Brianna get monologued at, because that's the kind of shit she does to other people. On the other hand, it is a bit frustrating because I would like to actually hear this person take Marci Bowers to task a little bit, but she's, like, getting interrupted all the time. Marci Bowers can go off making the sales pitches and stuff like that. Why she red? Fuck knows. Draw your own conclusions. Also, Atom Ale, drink again. You got to drink again. It's not optional. If you haven't vomited yet, I will hope that will happen soon. That's a joke. That's a joke. I don't actually want you to.
An equal chance to talk as we're doing this. That would feel fair to me. So
Marcy Bowers is almost 70. Jesus. They look a similar age. 1958. 67. Okay, yeah. That would say that. Bowers and a wife of 3 children. Not sure if she's still involved in her children. It's possible. I mean, those children are probably decently old themselves. Alcoholism. Hey, listen. I'm saying nothing. If people want to speculate, that's up to them.
So I hear what you're saying on that. I feel like we're jumping around a bit, so I want to come back to something you touched on because I think this is a really big point of disagreement. But I also want to make sure we give FTMs their due because I think this needs to be radically unpacked. So, Alex, do you have any preference about which way we go with this? Would you rather go down talking about the non-binary stuff she brought up, or stay on the FTMs for now?
I think here's what I would like to do, just to pull back for a second, because I think we just got out of the gate in the weeds, and people, you both are deeply ensconced in these conversations, and I think just to frame it up for people, I think like for a second, and then we'll have time for both of those, and I think just in general, when thinking about the conversation around gender affirming care, and I think the conversation there's one around kids or generally teens and adults. So I think we should just focus around, in general, be focused on the teen conversation, because I think that is the conversation.
I never like to use that word "science is settled" because that is not science is never settled. It's always evolving. But
yeah, very true. Some of your disciples need to listen to this. Maybe you should drill that into them. I don't know.
But but for adults, that evidence is very strong that gender affirming care. The real issue
is it. We just looked at a study of over 100,000 people that suggested that maybe it's not helping them as much as you think it is.
And this is why we're running into so much trouble. We ran into it this last political cycle. Is that particularly conservative lawmakers and religious conservatives see gender as godly prescribed, assigned.
Oh, we get this out of. Oh, we can start like fucking projecting on conservatives. There's no conservatives here. I mean, I guess I don't know about this guy whose podcast it is. It's just so convenient.
Particularly last political cycle is that particularly conservative lawmakers and religious conservatives see gender as godly prescribed, assigned at birth, in a perfect binary.
Sure.
And they take a third grade biology approach to humanity.
This boogeyman shit. Oh, conservatives think this. Are we talking about conservatives right now?
And it's never been that way. There's one in
my literal job is stopping Republicans, but the political project has nothing to do with our healthcare. My literal job is to stop them. This is a healthcare discussion, and it is completely exogenous.
So true.
We're talking about healthcare between a doctor and a patient.
Yes.
So true.
So when it comes to gender affirming care and sort of children and teenagers and adolescents, there is the context for this WPATH standards of care moving from 6 to 7 to 8, which is really what we're talking about, right? So I think for people at home.
Hey, Atom Ale. Hey, Atom Ale. You gotta take a shot. Anyway.
Number one, WPATH is an organization that has immense influence over what is best medical practice around the world. It is the sort of gold standard for best practice. There was a shift from 6 to 7 to a more affirmative model. And then there was a shift from 7 to 8 that did a number of things. And we will get into them. It got rid of age minimums. It got rid of what I think trans sort of advocates call gatekeeping, and replaced it within a model that is called informed consent. And I think that is what we really do need to get into and break down. There are other things like eunuch as a gender and saying puberty blockers were reversible. So there's a lot, but this...
She actually does blink so much. Jesus Christ.
SOC 8 is really what governs
Yeah, I think this guy is like too intrusive. I think this guy is, you get these like moderators of like debates or whatever that jump in way too often. I think this guy is very much that. Like, it's been half an hour. What like real conversation have we had so far?
Medical care in the 24 states where this is still allowed, right? Obviously, the broader context is that the political situation when it comes to this care is deeply fraught in ways we can talk about. So I do just want to get at this concept of informed consent, because I think it is the most important concept and underlies all of the other questions that we are getting into, right? And so SOC 8, its concept of informed consent is one of what? How, like, take a stab
let's go back a little bit. I've been a member of WPATH since
I have
2001.
barely talked in this, Marci. I would really love you to share with the mic a little bit.
All right, so Brianna, take informed consent away, and then
Yes, come on. Actually fucking say something. Like, fucking hell. It's been almost half an hour. I'm technically on, like, Brianna's side here. I probably agree with her more than Marci Bowers on WPATH. But, like, fucking grow a pair. Fucking do something.
In 2001.
So this is one of my really biggest problems with...
This is what she does to other people. Holy shit.
A member of WPATH since
I have
2001.
barely talked in this, Marci. I would really love you to share with the mic a little bit.
All right, so Brianna, take informed consent away, and then
So in 2001.
So this is one of my really...
Marci is like trolling Brianna at this point. Hang on. Look at the look on her face. Look at the look on Marci's face after Brianna complains about not having enough talk time. And she's like, in 2001, like starting off some kind of story. This is 100%. I'm sorry. I'm here to hear Brianna Wu, like, take this person to task a little bit. Because she at least did something of a job. Trying to hold fucking Eli Ehrlich to account on Piers Morgan. But this is the same shit that Brianna Wu does to people that Marci Bowers is now doing to her, and you can tell. Oh my god, that is like 100% troll face right there. That's hilarious.
Biggest problems with SOC8. This has been a disaster. I think this affirmative care model has been disastrous.
Like, this has all been a disaster. Like, make an actual point though. Drill down into something. Say anything. Oh, fucking hell.
For trans people in a really, really...
Yeah, the AGP smirk, but it's like... I don't know. Listen. It's an AGP smirk, but I think that Marci earned it just then. Did I just tell a trans person to grow a pair? Yes, I did. I'll do it again. Fucking hell. Perhaps that was part of the problem with Brianna Wu. I don't know.
Really want to walk through this because this is my biggest problem with it. There are a lot of states today where you can walk in and you can just sign some forms and say, I acknowledge this, and get on testosterone literally that day. When I transition, hold on.
That's not
Marci,
really, they're
Marci,
not
I really need you
following
to
the standards
respect
of
me
care.
and stop talking over me, please. When I
Okay, listen, this is getting good. I don't know. One of my favorite pieces of content around Brianna Wu is her like debate with Queeman. And I feel like she's starting to feel a little bit like how he felt. In fact, I think there was a comment, because I looked at the comments. You really wish they had that mute button you used on Queeman. So I'm kind of torn, because I agree with Brianna Wu, but like, she kind of deserves this, quite honestly.
literally that day. When I transition, hold on.
That's not
Marci,
really, they're
Marci,
not,
I really need you
following
to
the standards
respect
of
me
care.
and stop talking over me, please. When I transitioned 20 years ago, I went through every single one of the Benjamin Standards that were written in
I tell you what gets the fucking point then.
1998. It was not particularly difficult to go through. I went to a doctor. I had therapy for 3 months. I had every...
How much have you missed? Listen, it's only just starting to get good. It's been like boring as fuck. It's just been fucking Marci Bowers rambling on and on and on. And now Brianna's starting to get a bit testy about it. So you came at the right time. Yeah, definitely.
Every single... It was the
Oh, that was you. Hi, Queen Bee. Yeah, I fully agree. Jesus. It's funny. As much as I'm on this person's side with this conversation, it's funny watching her get the same treatment from someone else.
DSM-4 at the time. I had every single criteria on there. Very easily got clearance for hormones. And even though I was in Oxford, Mississippi, I found an endocrinologist who was willing to work with the letter that my therapist gave me. I literally went over to the Mississippi Endocrinology Center and would like read textbooks to try to figure out the dosing because my doctor had no idea back then. Then from there, I left. And my next stop was actually...
I've heard that plenty of doctors still don't really understand things like dosing. I think it was that Elena video. It's kind of a shame that she stopped doing content because that was an actual, like, quite sensible trans person.
Your clinic. And you actually required, when I got vaginoplasty from you, you required the 2 letters from that 1998 standard, one of which was just a letter written by a therapist, and another was one that cost me $1,000 to get written, actually, that was by a psychiatrist that went very deeply into my entire case history. They presented it to your clinic. These are the standards that you followed when you did my vaginoplasty. Y'all looked at this. The nurses, I remember going over them. They approved them. I wrote a check to them in there, and I've never had a second of regret for any of that. My problem is this removal of all these medical safeguards has put an avalanche of people into this system
that I think are not
served.
There are still safeguards.
They are not served.
You just can't.
Like, we've at least made a point here, being that, oh, there was more standards back in the day. But you need to start showing some things. You need to start, nailing some fucking crosses to the wall somehow.
Alex, can I please... Alex,
I'm complaining to the moderator now.
Yeah, no, you need to be able to finish, Brianna.
Okay, I'm fine, but it's taken. There's a lot there.
Yeah, just try and fucking concision. Yeah, concision. Be concise. Actually, like, didn't she write anything down? Like, here's a few, like, concise points that I can, like, throw at her instead of all of this. Well, back in the day, in my day, I had to do this and I had to do that and I had to do this and I had to do that. It's like, I almost can't blame Marci Bowers getting a bit bored listening to you.
And I need to respond at some point.
So what I was saying is, I think the problem is today, you have a lot of people that are going and they're being rushed through this system. And I think you have healthcare providers that are undereducated on the dynamics of this, particularly with autism, particularly with comorbidities. And I think the classical cases, like you and I think we are very clearly responding to the medication. I think the truth is, in 2025, this affirmative access model...
Like, responding to the medication how? I didn't know about this.
...has allowed all kinds of people to go in and start HRT. We have non-binary people. There's not even a way to define non-binary people clinically. It's just top to bottom.
Well, how do we define trans clinically? It's just about identity now. So anyone can kind of say that they are.
It is fetishistic cross-dressers, which were very explicitly cut out of the 1998 standards. We have them coming through. Healthcare providers are not educated on this, and they're moving down a medicalized pathway. And I think a really big problem why you're seeing this maladjusted behavior in the trans community is...
Isn't Blanchard kind of evidence that they've kind of always been treating like AGPs? Because that's what she's getting at. I think, isn't there evidence that that's always been the case?
It's a population of people that are not served by our healthcare, Marci. You and I really responded to this because we were the thing in the medical textbook. But when you lower these safeguards, this
is pseudoscience. Why Brianna Wu? Could you have not got anyone better than Brianna? Well, the problem is you probably can't. Who the fuck else talks about this kind of shit? It's so painful.
Severely, you have people that are being rushed through this and they're not adjusting like you and I are. They're not getting jobs. They're not integrating. They're not making it to the other side. Like, anyone can look at the trans...
Like, what jobs do Brianna Wu even have? I tried looking it up. She's like worked in politics. It's all very vague. She had a game studio, which did fuck all. I guess technically she made a game. Like, what jobs has this person done?
Community today and see this.
Yeah, Brianna did it the right way. We need more trans women that will grow up to be just like Brianna. This is the gold standard, ladies and gentlemen. Does Brianna think Marci is an AGP? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think they've always been treating AGPs.
Well, let's start with that last point.
Please.
Disinformation, misinformation that continues to be uttered about the trans community, the hatred, frankly, that's been fomented by not only...
Yeah, I looked up Brianna Wu's work history. Brianna Wu is such an unreliable, like, narrator. Like, things like her education history, she lied about. All the narratives about living off rice and beans, making a fucking subpar video game. It's all extremely suspicious. I don't really know what Brianna Wu's like worked as. And she's not like a normal person. She comes from a very She's from a very privileged background and is married to someone with a lot of money.
Not only politically, but societally towards trans people as a result of fear and misinformation, some of which you're actually repeating in some of the things you had to say. It's true. There still are letters required. The standards of steer
Not
still
universally.
Yes, they are required for bottom surgery. Absolutely, they are required.
Okay, so but they're not
Including
required.
Yeah, but she was talking about HRT, wasn't she? She was saying that people are getting on HRT too quickly, not bottom surgery.
Hormones and
PhD.
puberty blockers.
They're not required
Yeah,
for
they're not.
hormones.
And for the vast
Yeah, she was talking about hormones. Like, now Marcy's kind of changing the goalposts a bit.
Facial
majority of
surgery.
gender
For
affirming
facial
cases.
surgery,
Right.
no. But they aren't required for cisgender people of the same age, and that was the point. It was about fairness. This came from the trans community. These were directives that were insisted upon by members of the trans community who were sick of the gatekeeping. Now, not all of, very little of what they would have liked. They would have ideally liked a fully informed consent model for care, and that is not what we have. WPATH is like a cruise ship. It moves much too slowly for the likes of people. When we make a turn in direction, it's much too slow for the majority, for many of the people who on the left, let's say. We do so with evidence, and we do so with a lot of trepidation and thoughtfulness. Now,
what is the evidence, Marci? I because you referred to earlier anecdotally.
I forward the perfect. I hope you're good.
And
Evidence.
Yes, because I really did a lot of research, and
evidence-based care is taking.
How do I feel about Brianna Wu? I think Brianna Wu comes off very dishonest, and she's not doing an amazing job holding Marci to task here.
It's not just the science, but it's also scientific consensus. So when evidence was lacking, we did a process called the Delphi process.
From gatekeeping to free for all didn't took that much, just a few years. Yeah, geez. Yeah, I mean, like, people, you're hearing too many stories about people, like, going into certain clinics and walking out with a prescription. I don't know if it's fair to say that WPATH is responsible for that when they might not even be recommending that kind of thing. But it's able to happen. You know, like, these clinics have a monetary incentive or whatever. Then yeah, they probably are going to fast track people, especially people with more money. I'm sure I saw some detransition that talk about, like, you know, how some people complain about their interminable wait times and others seem to be able to get their HRT like this. And it's usually because of money. Why do people automatically assume that gatekeeping is a bad thing? Because we're in an era of patient-led care, and what we want is for the patient to dictate to their doctor what they want, and for the doctor to be a yes man and just give it straight away instead of any kind of standards in the way. But gatekeeping is always necessary to at least some extent.
Again, I wish I would have had a chance to have. I didn't know this was a debate about the standards of care. So, pardon me, I'm just an author on one chapter, the surgery chapter. Each had a subsection and chapter leads, and then members of the scientific community who provided input into those chapters and reviewed the literature. And you can look at every chapter. Each chapter has, many of them have hundreds of references listed of the available science.
I did look at the studies in the standards of care, and we don't have to go super deep in Brianna.
Well, you
can
go
weigh in here. I don't think a lot of medicine has weak evidence base. So I'm not saying because there's a weak evidence base that we should not be having conversations about the most compassionate medical care for kids with dysphoria. Before we get to SOC8, because this is when I got really interested.
Well, I haven't even had a chance to answer the other 5 things at Brianna that I had issue with. So
okay, so we can put a pin in it. I just do want to make sure we get to the evidence base because
let's talk about
that a number of times.
So evidence-based medicine, the level of evidence is this lofty goal of having a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled process, which in areas that where
so far I complained about the moderator. There's a much better question. Like, we're actually aiming something at her, because it's true, like, a lot of the evidence is like weak, it's like testimonial, it's stuff like that.
Process, which in areas that where the outcome is disastrous to not treat. Let's say diabetes. If you put everything through, diabetes has low level of evidence for the ability. Why? Because
but diabetes, like, you leave that untreated, they'll die, and not by killing themselves. Like, they'll pass away naturally. because of the condition they have. You can't really compare trans to diabetes.
Would never put a diabetic through non-treatment. You would never put them through a randomized blinded control when you have a therapy, when you know insulin is beneficial.
And like, all of this is very well and good, but like, if you wouldn't do like double blinds for like ethical reasons, it doesn't then lift up the quality of the evidence you do have. The evidence you do have is still weak if it's weak, you know what I mean? So like, if testimonial evidence is the best they can get, then it's all pretty weak. It doesn't become better because you can't do anything of a higher standard. And we're talking about something far less vital than dealing with like diabetes, you know?
You would never take someone with cancer and put them through a placebo.
Cancer is also not like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Control. So this right away drops their level of evidence. And this is a large part.
Yeah, but like, you have to fucking do something because that cancer is like fucking killing those people. Gender dysphoria isn't killing anyone. What you're doing is banking on treating suicide the same as like the inevitable effects of something like cancer or like untreated diabetes or untreated heart disease or some shit, which is just nuts. What's next? Treating gender dysphoria as a form of multiple myeloma. Hey, maybe. Who knows?
Part of medicine is not guided by high levels of evidence. So when you have a population that is potentially suicidal.
It's just gross, man. Stop with this. It's always the same shit. Well, they're potentially suicidal. Like, oh my God. And then we see, like, this is what I mean when I say I think some of this is just kicking the can down the road. Because you look at a study that suggests that post-op trans people, they're more likely to have mental health issues, suicidal ideation. So, like, what are we actually doing here? Are we helping anything? Aren't we kind of moving towards where maybe the cast review was correct? Maybe we do need to start looking at treating other issues that these people have instead of just, oh, well, if we transition you, then maybe it'll help some of your issues. You might just end up with the same issues further down the road. That's exactly what happened with me. I mean, I don't know. It's a bit difficult for me because I have certain things that are like just not easily diagnosed or dealt with. But like, this is just mad.
Has major mental health issues, you don't put them through randomized double-blind controlled studies. However, you do take time. You slow things down.
The evidence for gender affirming care is like the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, that's kind of what I found. People like to cite, I think it's GLAAD, has a list of every major medical organization and like what they're saying. And then half of them are saying that exact line. So it's like, well, they're all pointing at each other, you know? It's a life-threatening but treatable condition, but it's not an illness. Yeah, and it makes no sense. Like, at this stage, are we not kind of defining trans around gender dysphoria?
And the therapists that I know and that I work with, they put patients.
I mean, I guess they'll say, oh, well, trans doesn't necessarily mean you have gender dysphoria. And what they're specifically talking about is treatment for gender dysphoria. But I don't know, man. This suicide thing is not really good enough. Like, how do you know that treating other things or helping people with their perspectives instead of pinning all their hopes on transitioning wouldn't help them?
Through time. This takes time.
Isn't that anecdotal?
This idea of these pop-up clinics. Now, some of that happened. The pandemic conspired in some of that patients weren't able to access care. We already know that access to gender-affirming care was abysmal, and that was well before we ever got into the political attacks that began in the 2020s. And we know that lack of access to care increases suicidality and stress on individuals. When you have to travel 300 miles to access gender-affirming care, it's very, very frustrating and very difficult. So
Brianna,
people began to pop up their the advent of online medicine, pop-up clinics run by trans people where basically it was almost vending machine-like.
Yeah, this is bad. And it suggests that maybe trans people are too close to this and shouldn't be running all of it like this.
Availability. That was...
If you ask a trans person, they'd probably say, yeah, give all the trans people all the drugs tomorrow. Like, fucking hell.
Clearly wrong. And that is not laid out in the standards of care. That is not how care is meant to be delivered.
So, Marci,
It is meant to.
Well, if it's not laid out that way and they're the ones setting the standards of care, what powers do they have to like deal with clinics that are not going by their standards? My guess is none whatsoever.
It is meant to have a complete psychosocial.
Please let me talk, girl. Please let me talk some.
Are you going to let me finish once?
We can put a clock up, girl.
Let me just finish one thought. Brianna, please.
Fucking hell. I thought 41% was a transphobic dog whistle, but it seems to be the core of their argument. Yep, very true. It's not a dog whistle for anything. I mean, I guess if you could just go around saying 41%, you're probably alluding to trans suicide, but it is actually a literal argument too, so.
I didn't know I was going to be attacked. I'm sorry.
You're not being attacked. We're trying to talk policy. We're trying to talk.
I didn't know I was going to be attacked. It's a fucking debate, you retard. What are you doing here? Experts debate the future. Was she not told that this would be a debate? That there might have to be some kind of whatever?
Let me talk, girl. Please let me talk some.
Are you going to let me
Girl. Fuck off. White trans woman.
finish once?
We can put a clock up, girl.
Let me just finish one thought. Brianna, please. I didn't know I was going to be attacked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, now this is going to take longer because Brianna Wu interrupted almost when she was done talking.
You're not being attacked. We're trying to talk policy. We're trying to talk policy.
I have to be honest. The WPATH standards of care and how they are delivered. I didn't know I was going to be attacked. I'm sorry.
You're not being attacked. We're trying to talk policy. We're trying to talk policy.
I'm a little surprised about how this is going. Okay, fair enough. I guess she's used to just someone kissing her ass. Like, how many times has this person like entered into like a conversation like this? How many times has this person had to like defend their ideology and their policies and shit? I'm gonna guess it doesn't happen very often, you know?
Policy.
I have to be honest. The WPATH standards of care and how they are delivered by the professionals that I work with, the first thing that is administered is a complete.
I think it must be a thing. Like, whenever she starts getting impatient and wants to talk again, suddenly the video game poses like intensify. It's like she's really going at it now.
Psychosocial evaluation. That whether you're an adolescent, whether you're an adult, that is first and foremost. No one goes in.
Yeah, poor Marci having to be attacked on a debate. Wow.
No one is supposed to go in and walk out with a prescription for hormones. That is not how the standards of care were meant to be delivered.
Let me just talk about the reality of how they're being delivered.
Sorry?
It's the reality in many places. You can go in. Free Press had a fantastic. Sure. Barry Weiss had a fantastic article at Free Press about how Planned Parenthood is.
I'm sorry, that's not a credible journalist.
Barry Weiss had a fantastic article at Free Press about how Planned Parenthood is.
That's not a credible journalist.
It's so convenient. Oh, this person is an incredible journalist. You haven't even looked at it. You don't know the contents. You might not like a journalist, but they might have like actual fucking evidence. They might actually have put something out that actually has some truth behind it. But oh, well, they're not a credible journalist. Well, who would you listen to then?
She had we're talking healthcare policy, not personal attacks. She had a really good article that was deeply researched about how Planned Parenthood has become one of the top providers of testosterone in the entire.
The right has hated Planned Parenthood.
Marci, please, girl.
The religious right, like Jesus Christ. I can't tell who I'm supposed to like. This is one of those everyone sucks here type situations. I'll say like the moderator at least occasionally puts a decent question to Marci.
Please.
I'm sorry.
Well, you have to respond. This is a conversation.
Yeah, don't stop fighting on my account.
Conversation is free flowing. That means
keep it up. I'll be pitching a tent suit. That's a joke.
Goes back and forth.
Okay, well, I'll just talk over you when you keep monologuing.
We're doing all right.
Does that sound good?
Okay.
This is exactly what she fucking deserves. This is so much. This is exactly what she fucking deserves. I don't know how quickly I'll be able to find what I'm talking about here. This is like the chickens coming home to roost. As much as I think this person is talking at her ass and has very convenient outs for literally everything. Barry Weiss is a lesbian liberal. Yeah, it doesn't sound like the religious right, but if you've got a boogeyman, you can just endlessly refer to them. Oh, all the conservatives, this. Like, fuck off. There's no conservatives here. You're talking to fucking Brianna Wu.
Sorry.
Well, you have to let me
How
respond. If this is
Planned
a conversation,
Parenthood.
a conversation is free flowing. That means it goes back and forth.
Okay, well, I'll just talk over you when you keep monologuing.
We're
How's that
doing all
sound?
right.
Does
Hey,
family disowned?
I mean, I would just like to acknowledge the fact that you came into this conversation talking about my research skills, but you have been repeating claims about someone for years with no research done.
So this is what I'm talking about when I say I don't feel bad for Brianna getting like so cut off so often, like getting so heated, having to listen to someone else monologue. I don't know where a good example exactly is, so it might take a short while.
Interesting.
There's a YouTuber called Queeman debating Brianna Wu, like bringing some issues he has with her to task.
Well, Queen, is that a fair characterization of the situation?
Be extremely easy if I really struggle with poverty. For my game studio, we were living in Frank's uncle's house rent free. The majority of everything Frank and I made was going to pay payroll. We paid Maria, we paid Amanda, we had to pay voice actors. Frank actually would get off of work because we couldn't afford a 3D modeler and did work all evening in Inventor Fusion. And then we came up with this weird pipeline to turn Inventor Fusion stuff into, from NURBS to polygonal models. So I'm not lying. That was a tremendously stressful, financial period of my life. Thank God it's so much better now.
The American Medical Association should be setting the standards. Yeah, well, they probably will be. I can't imagine, under Donald Trump, they'll be working with WPATH. And there's countries turning their back on it, where we're not doing things the way WPATH says to do them in the UK. I can't imagine places like Sweden, Finland, those kind of places are still doing things the way that WPATH wants them done.
Okay, so my issue with that is that it's in the presentation, right? Is that you'll present it as though you were super hard done by, but you actually had all of these advantages coming in from all around the outside that were set up for you, not by any work of your own, but by the circumstances of you and Frank's familiar operations.
I think if you looked at my comments through Gamergate, there would be a lot of acknowledging privilege. I will tell you right now, I 100% acknowledge that. I've also had some really tough stuff happen in my life that's
Is Marci in an echo chamber? Most definitely, yeah.
given me a ton of resilience. And, I was looking today, I've been sober for 21 years. That didn't happen serendipitously. That takes a lot of willpower to
See how she'll go off on one about all kinds of stuff that we're not even talking about.
do that. And I'm very proud of that.
But no one's saying you can't be proud of things in your life.
I mean, that was actually quite short.
The point was more about the fact that you presented it as though it was all self-made. You worked from scratch.
No.
It's not quite.
No,
Right.
I'm not. I would not present myself that way.
Sure, that's okay. That's a disagreement presentation. I'd agree that's probably a weaker point, for sure.
I mean, I think this is something.
Well, hold on. That was almost a Queen concession.
Yeah.
I'll concede to the fact that it's all in framing. It's all in the framing, ultimately.
Something
Okay, I don't know where to find a good example, but she'll monologue till the cows come home and mute you if she's not happy with you not wanting to wait for a 5-minute ramble that starts in fucking 2008 or whatever shit. But then suddenly she's getting super wound up because Marci Bowers is doing the exact same thing to Brianna, what Brianna does to other people.
we're doing okay. Brianna, finish your thought. We're working through this. Thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to.
We're trying.
There was a great
good faith.
article about how Planned Parenthood is one of the top providers of testosterone in the entire country. It's got plenty of anecdotes in there about affirmative access, how someone walks in, signs a form, walks out on testosterone. I don't have to tell you, Marci, testosterone is not the same as estrogen. You can end up incontinent in your 20s because your bladder will not work anymore. So you're wearing adult diapers. You can have sepsis.
All right.
Yeah, I've not heard of that. Testosterone incontinent. Association of serum testosterone levels. Pelvic floor integrity. Improved stress incontinence in a rodent model. Women in the lowest quartile of serum testosterone were more likely to complain of stress and mixed incontinence. Low serum testosterone is associated with an increased likelihood of stress and mixed incontinence of women. So there is something to this. You might be Team Brianna. I'm I'm flip-flopping hard. Because I hate fucking what Brianna does. And a lot of the shit that Marci is subjecting her to, she fucking fully deserves.
right, now
your
that's
uterus
called
confused together.
disinformation.
That's 100% true.
Okay,
Anyone
honey,
can fact
baby,
check
now,
this.
I'm sorry. That is
100%.
that is
And like someone like Marcy Bauer, she just hasn't heard of any of this stuff that is like bad. So I don't know, like what we supposed to do here. Correlation of serum circulating testosterone levels with stress, urinary incontinence in postmenopausal women. This is menopausal women. It's not a, menopausal woman getting certain kinds of treatment. It's not trans men. Sorry. So, serum testosterone levels are significantly lower in women with STY than in healthy control women. Indicate that low levels of serum testosterone are associated with increased likelihood of stress urinary incontinence in women. What Brianna has said is there's backing to it. I don't know how often taking testosterone as a female is gonna cause incontinence, but there is some evidence behind this. So it's a bit scary that Marcy Bowers is just straight away like, oh, I've not heard of any of that. Kind of seems like maybe she's collecting all the stuff that agrees with her and ignoring anything that doesn't.
Will not work anymore, so you're wearing adult diapers. You can have sepsis.
All right, now
your uterus confused together. That's 100% true.
Okay,
anyone can fact check this.
I'm sorry,
100%.
That is disinformation.
The incontinence isn't true. You don't think
like it's just not true. Like there's definitely evidence for it. Is it happening the way Brianna's saying to like every trans man? Probably not. Maybe she's putting it in a way that sounds kind of exaggeratory, but like, yeah, I don't know.
think people are incontinent
Absolutely
if they go on testosterone?
not. Unequivocally, no.
Okay.
So, all right, let's stay
hold
here for a second.
hold on. This is Alex.
I've lived
This is
with
not
two
fair
trans
because I
men,
don't
believe
have
me,
any time to
incontinence is
talk.
not the issue. That's
It's fundamentally
All
unfair.
She doesn't have any time to talk. Oh no, what a shame.
Hormones are
Brianna, you can
remarkably safe.
respond.
So let's not let this.
I agree.
devolve into-
Estrogen is great.
Let's not let this
but there are
devolve into
different risk
disinformation where
factors.
I'm
They're
just not gonna be
different.
able to
It's not
continue.
disinformation. There are different risk factors for estrogen versus testosterone. That's just true. There's a lot of differences. You don't get the euphoria if you go on testosterone and
The what?
estrogen rather as a
Okay, the euphoria? What? Hang on. This sounds a bit dodgy.
It's not gonna be
different.
able to
It's not
continue.
disinformation. There are different risk factors for estrogen versus testosterone. That's just true. There's a lot of differences. You don't get the euphoria if you go on testosterone.
Like, I mean, I didn't get euphoria from taking estrogen. I've heard that like testosterone is like sense of euphoria on T. Because like you can feel like, I thought testosterone raised the mood. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Using feelings of euphoria rather than belligerent. Mood swings, euphoria. Most of the public literature agrees on the fact that testosterone is anxiolytic. What does that mean? Antidepressant, improves spatial abilities. What does anxiolytic mean? Used to reduce anxiety. I have a feeling Brianna is full of shit on this point. Oh no. How's that gonna work? By euphoria, does she mean it's stiffy? Maybe. Depends. If you're blocking testosterone, then you're probably not getting many stiffies. Let's be real. But yeah, I thought euphoria was like, that's like a way people explain like gender euphoria, like in trans men at least. Is a trans man experiencing gender euphoria because like they've got testosterone and that matches how they feel on the inside, which is pseudoscience, by the way, or is it more that it has a kind of effect that makes you feel that way? I mean, you're on steroids. Yeah, I mean, adverse effects of short-term corticosteroid therapy, euphoria, hypomania. And to be clear, different steroids, I presume, are gonna do different things. But I think Brianna is full of shit on this point. Like, where are you getting this from? Trans men don't get the euphoria?
and
The what?
estrogen rather, as opposed to testosterone, that gives you this high, which is why it's a controlled substance.
The what?
Estrogen rather, that's just true. There's a lot of differences. You don't get the euphoria if you go on testosterone, and
The what?
estrogen rather, as opposed.
Oh no, she misspoke. Okay, I get it. I get it now. I get it. You don't get the, yeah.
That's just true. There's a lot of differences. You don't get the euphoria if you go on testosterone, and
The what?
estrogen rather, as opposed to.
Okay, that was a pause Andy on my part. So she's actually saying you don't get the euphoria on estrogen.
Testosterone, that gives you this high, which is why it's a controlled substance.
Oh, come on.
There are fundamental.
Okay, no, there is actually something to what Brianna's saying. And once again, oh, come on. Oh, this is ridiculous. Like, it doesn't actually take very much, does it? Marcy Bowers is quite easily flustered. And we'll reach for that, oh, that must be ridiculous. Like, you haven't heard of, like, this is fairly well documented, is it not?
Differences between them.
So let's just finish with informed consent.
Yeah, you
for
need
one
to
second.
stick to a medically accepted argument, though, please.
We'll start with Brianna here. How do you think about the concept of informed consent when we're referring to
Medically accepted argument. Like, what I was looking at before, I'm sure it kind of suggested. Listen, we're back on Brianna's side. I was pause Andying, but like we talk about, what was it Marcy said?
here? How do you think about the concept?
High, which is why it's a controlled substance.
Finish with informed consent.
Yeah,
for
you
one
need
second.
to
Brianna,
stick to a medically accepted argument.
Medically accepted argument. But I'm looking at this and it's like something about the literature. Easier doing it this way. Most of the public literature agrees on the fact that testosterone reduces anxiety, antidepressant, spatial abilities. Quite a big thing. Memory. You wonder if like reducing testosterone is like to do with like brain fog that some people talk about. I'm like spitballing with that though, to be clear. Any association or correlation, but not causal relationship on testosterone effect on behavior. Nevertheless, seems to affect brain functions. Difficult to conclude how it affects cognitions, emotions. But most of the published literature agrees on the fact that testosterone is anxiolytic, antidepressant, improves spatial abilities. It's oversimplified. So it kind of sounds like Marcy's talking out her ass here.
finish with informed consent.
Yeah,
for
you
one
need
second.
to
Brianna,
stick to a
It's like she's kind of like, oh, well, because I'm the doctor, I get to decide what's like real and what isn't. But it just seems like she's like casting aside anything that's not convenient, which sucks. Be nice to see someone speaking up for WPATH who's actually being honest. I don't think Marcy is a very honest person, not from this at least. Which I guess, listen, maybe these two deserve each other ultimately.
a medically accepted argument, though, please.
we'll start with Brianna here. How do you think about the concept of informed consent when we're referring to teenagers and younger children?
For everyone. Yeah. I really benefited from going through the standards of care. 100% I did. Marcy, I was actually like at the edge of homelessness when you did my vaginoplasty. I was immediately disowned the second I came out. It was the worst time in my life economically was when I was in Colorado. I was literally working at GameStop saving up enough to do your surgery. And like the standards of care, the fact that when I was doing all my
Oh, she worked at a GameStop apparently. Wow.
letters, it really gave me time to prepare and to have a plan in place in case my parents disowned me, because they did. It let me really think through the consequences of that action. It allowed me to work with my university. I was actually the first student at the University of Mississippi to transition, which I'm very proud of. So I've heard this argument over and over again from the trans community that like the standards of care are like this oppression, and I truly have never been able to understand why. I transitioned in Mississippi, and I had no issues whatsoever. And it's like the DSM standards were much higher in the DSM-4 as opposed to the DSM-5. You've got to have 2 of those 6 criterias, and you're telling me someone can't go talk to a therapist for 3 months before like changing their endocrine?
Yeah. We was debating our own surgeon. That's true.
system forever, 2 out of 6, it's just insane to me. So I think we are not serving people by not giving them a pathway to go down. And just one more thing. Something I've noticed is the trans community is so radically different today than 20 years ago. And I think one of the problems is that the standards of care, go read the ones from 1998, they're really smart in the sense that every step socializes you into the next one. It's like, I had gender dysphoria. I wanted to do this, so I went to a therapist. I did that. It opened up a door. I wanted to get hormones. Went, talked to a doctor. It opened up a door. Then I had to go hold a job for a year. I had to go out in the real world. I couldn't just sit at home on the computer. It opened up a door. It forced me to go learn some stuff about how to interact with the world as a woman, which...
Marci Bowers is also the one that did Jazz Jennings' surgery. Didn't go as well as Brianna's, apparently.
I'm going to tell you, this is hard to learn. And, then I went and got vaginoplasty. Every step led into the next one and gave me a way to become an integrated, normal, productive member of society that could hold a job. And I don't see this today. And I really think that the destruction of these medical safeguards are really not serving trans
First
people.
of all, you're going to have to stop,
lot of the maladaptive
stop saying destruction of medical safeguards, because that is, there are still letters required. The thing that...
Well, yeah, but the problem is, she's been saying that some of these clinics, they're treating people way too quickly. And all you can really come back with, well, that's what WPATH says to do. But it's still happening. Like, it kind of seems like there has been a removal of safeguards. Possibly because healthcare providers are just allowed to fucking do that shit. And there's probably nothing much that WPATH can do about that. Hang on.
Of these medical safeguards are really not serving trans people.
First of all, you're going to have to
lot of the maladaptive
stop saying destruction of medical safeguards, because that is...
I have a good one for you, Vaughn. I hope you're good.
Still letters required. The thing that has been eliminated is this idea of living in a we used to call it a real life experience, or a desired gender role.
Yes.
I still recommend that for my patients.
You should.
Every patient, that's one of the questions we ask. And I'm frankly alarmed if they have... Fortunately, we have a long wait list, so patients are in general required to have some sort of employment. And they generally do when they come as far as surgery. They are, for the most part, employed, fortunately, these days. Moving as the... what we say, the left wing of the trans community.
To be fair, Marci is a surgeon. All they know is to cut up bodies. Talk therapy doesn't make the money. Yeah, I guess.
Would have is towards an informed consent model. I think, I'm going to sort through all the disinformation you said and pick out what I can agree with.
It's not disinformation, Marci. It's not.
It's just
what she said that's disinformation.
But it's flat out.
It's not. You've put all kinds of bullshit up.
Can you just let me speak?
No, it's like you cut me off. You're just completely lying at the beginning of this about the high standards and the standards of care. So if you want to talk disinformation, we can do this.
Brianna. Let's finish, Marci. Finish.
There is still letters that are required.
There are letters that are required.
She's not doing it well, but she's got this plan to try. I'm getting respect for Wu. Maybe. I don't know.
You're changing the subject.
Marci, finish.
There is still letters that are required.
There are letters that are required. You're changing the subject. They've been eliminated for facial feminization surgery in the
it is not
and it has been completely removed for HRT. That's what we're talking about. So stop bullshitting everyone.
You're yelling.
All right.
I'm yelling because you're being dishonest.
Let me just ask a question to both of you, because
she's actually so mad. Where does he get muted again in this?
Example for years.
Flagship?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
This was a weekend story, dude.
No, this was on your sci-fi episode, The Internet Ruined My Life. This was used in your Congress ad.
Do you think come on, man.
You described it in that episode. You described that car crash video as the scariest moment of your life.
It was terrifying when it happened. I was really terrified by that.
That seems quite unlikely, but regardless.
I 100% thought it was 100% real at the time. It really scared me. And something you may not know is...
I wish I knew some of the timestamps where he's getting muted and stuff. She's just going on and on and on. Not nice. It's not nice when it happens the other way, is it?
You're being dishonest.
Let me just ask question to
this person grins a lot. I have a feeling she knows. This is schizo kind of whatever, but you think Wu is doing well? I don't know. She's brought up some points. I'm not blown away, if I'm honest. And she's getting triggered quite easily. The problem is what Marci is subjecting her to is the kind of shit she subjects other people to. So it's kind of difficult to feel bad for Wu getting irritated by all the rambling and stuff.
To both of you, because
my expertise is in surgery. It's not in hormones. It's not. But
how does a patient, let's say a 14-year-old, how do they give informed consent? That is a question that comes up in the critiques of SOC8 all the time. It's like, how does a child who is
they are not emancipated adults. So in other words, they are not themselves able to give informed consent. They have to have a parent, at least preferably two parents, but at least one parent.
Yeah, a parent has to do it. So the doctors will tell the parents that the kid will kill themselves. Nice.
And they must sign for that individual.
Do the children, do you think, have a sense of what the complications could be down? Because
this is important, what you're getting at.
Yeah, you've talked about this and sort of offered some warnings. So I think it's worth putting those out there.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And how do we say to an 11 or 12-year-old, how do you present the future in a way that can account for what they may face in the future, whether it's the effects of hormones, life in the future, getting jobs, surgery complications.
You're asking a 12-year-old this. Does it not just sound ridiculous from the off?
That are sometimes years in the future. How do you afford that? This has to be very, very thoughtfully delivered and very honestly delivered.
Is it possible for a child that age to think of those things and to provide an answer that is going to be consistent, that they're going to stick with? When I hear this kind of stuff, it's just straight away, it's like, why are we doing this?
Delivered when that
you're asking 12-year-olds whether they're okay with it being harder to get a job. They're not going to be able to have their own kids and stuff like that. But they don't know how they're going to feel. Not that many 12-year-olds have decided what their fucking ideal employment is going to be. And if they have, it's probably something a bit wild and unrealistic. They should get 5 minutes to talk back and forth. I don't know. The problem is both of them are ramblers. It's just going to make it way more painful if it's like that. I don't know. I think that instead of bitching constantly, if Marci Bauer is going to start talking over you, then just do it back. Just talk over her back. It's fine.
That process is initiated. But the question is, and this is where people have come into doubt, is that how can someone have agency over their own gender identity at that age when adolescents change their mind about all sorts of things in their life?
I mean, gender identity by itself is pseudoscience anyway.
And all I can...
What else does Bowers think a 12-year-old can consent to? Presumably quite a lot of things, as long as they have enough conversations about it, I guess.
Say, and this is the essence of what it's about, is how do you prove this?
And a problem is always going to be, maybe this is genuinely her standards. They probably aren't being followed everywhere. And it's well, what does WPATH do when faced with clinics that are rushing people through because they just want the money and they don't really give a fuck? What can they actually do about any of that? My guess is not very much.
But all you can say is that gender identity is different and that gender identity is established by the age of 4, 5, 6 years old.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
In most cases. But what I do find troubling is that more and more adolescents are presenting not with a history all the way back to childhood, but coming de novo in their teen years. And this gets back at that cohort. How many, and again, Brie, you raised the issue of trans masculine persons suddenly assigned female at birth.
ROGD. So ROGD is real? Are we gonna... Has she ever spoken about ROGD? I wonder. We're kind of saying that ROGD is the thing, are we not? Where is it? Okay, you probably can't see this super well. I can hide my camera. I'll do that. So ROGD, Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria, is a largely discredited acronym. Wait, you're literally describing it here. What the fuck? Social contagion, ROGD. I mean, those are hand in hand, right? Suddenly got gender dysphoria because their mate does. Those things go hand in hand. Largely discredited acronym referring to those transgender persons who appear to come out of nowhere. Skeptics attributing their choice of transition as nothing more than social contagion. Well, it can be. That's the problem. Any of these things can be the case, and it's different for everyone. It's very easy to just kind of hand wave it. She loves hand waving stuff. There's a lot of hand-waving being done by Marci Bowers throughout this conversation. It's a term used by conservatives. Here we go. The boogeyman again. Wow. Any way of getting conservatives in there when we're talking about ROGD, just say what it is. And naysayers to deny, discredit, delegitimize transgender persons and their search for identity as being a short-term impulsive act influenced by others. But we're literally saying, you're literally like describing that. What the fuck, bro? Like, listen to this. We're literally talking about ROGD here.
What I do find troubling is that more and more adolescents are presenting not with a history all the way back to childhood, but coming de novo in their teen years.
ROGD, there we go. But on your website, it's discredited, apparently. And it's a thing that conservatives talk about. But I guess now you're talking about it? Oh, it's this is like so crooked.
And this gets back at that cohort. How many, and again, Brie, you raise the issue of trans masculine persons suddenly assigned female at birth, now identifying or saying they identify as male. How do you rationalize that dramatic increase? And then how do you sort out who is a candidate that really fits the criteria and who doesn't?
I fully agree. I think so.
But that isn't
yeah, I'd be worried if that many people feel like they're the same person they were at the age of 12. You might not be able to orgasm, but who cares? Like, yeah. Wait, I didn't even see that. Hang on. Let me just find that quickly. I'm sure there's all kinds of crazy fucking things on here. Was it near the bottom? What if I am unable to achieve orgasm? Try again by all means. Sometimes it takes friction, vibration, penetration. Sometimes it takes a combination, but it will work. Take comfort in the fact most of Dr. Bieber/Schrang's patients have been able to orgasm. Occasionally, testosterone will be back up as a cream to lower the orgasmic threshold. Best of all, as a woman, who cares? Physical contact of any kind trumps all. This is the same person talking about how, like, boys being transitioned into Hannah stage 2, it wasn't working. They weren't able to orgasm.
This is where I suspect we're going to have a lot of agreement.
Can you just let me finish this?
Well, sure. I was going to agree with you. But
how do you analyze that demographic, that changing demographic, and how do you put it through the filter of?
Yeah, who cares if you can orgasm coming from?
Family disowned me in the last 6 months of college, and I found myself homeless right after that. So,
out of personal curiosity, so for instance, I did the interdisciplinary.
The second was an observation that I had that every single child or adolescent who was truly blocked at Tanner stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero. These are just assigned male at birth, so trans, feminine, and it's because they never in their lives are exposed to testosterone. That doesn't change. So blockers prevent.
Yeah, but who cares, right? As a woman, who cares? Physical contact of any kind trumps all. Okay, bro. Okay, sure.
Best practices.
I think she's all over the place, quite frankly. This person is a bit nuts. The fact that this person is at this much power over how plenty of countries, like, allow people to transition based on these people's care. Like, it's quite scary, honestly.
Sure. So I hear what you're saying. And this is where I really feel like WPATH is jeopardizing those children.
Okay, stop attacking WPATH, because WPATH is on the side of trans persons. We're not recruiting people.
Are you on the side of children when you're transitioning them and then they can't orgasm? I think the children might need protecting from you, quite frankly.
What you're saying. And this is where I really feel like WPATH is jeopardizing those children.
Okay, stop attacking WPATH, because WPATH is on the side of trans persons. We're not recruiting.
On the side of trans persons. Remember the us versus them thing that was apparently a genocide or some shit, according to Helen Weberly.
People, we're not a machine. Stop
Marci,
attacking WPATH.
Let me finish.
Mate, you're a fucking. There's a machine, all right, for sure. A machine trying to stop boys from ever experiencing sexual pleasure by turning them into women when they're fucking 10 years old or whatever.
My point, please. I will attack.
Has to be one of the most misogynistic concepts. Who cares if women can orgasm? Damn. Yeah, Jesus. Well, I don't know. There's plenty of men out there that probably don't even think women can orgasm, so... The plenty of men, you're just a fucking receptacle. Not plenty, but some.
WPATH today, and you can
Well,
stay
then
on
I
the
think
call
we have our
and hear what I have to say.
conversation.
Well, let's make the argument, the substantive argument that underlies
Alex,
it.
you got
We have our attacking WPATH.
Let me finish my point, please. I will attack WPATH today, and you can
Well,
stay
then
on
I
the
think
call
we have our
and hear what I have to say.
conversation.
Oh, she doesn't want it. Why are you here? You don't want any kind of like... You don't want any kind of like pushback? Oh, it's so cringe. It's confirming every stereotype. Except it goes right to the top because it's Marci Bowers. Confirms every stereotype. Of how these people don't want to have to like take account for problems with the treatment that they're offering to children. When it's very contentious to whether children should be fucking transitioned in the first place.
Well, let's make the argument, the substantive argument that underlies
Alex,
it.
you have to let me finish, man.
Okay.
Come on,
Yeah,
this is not fair.
Just be a bit more assertive. Why complain constantly? Oh, I can't finish my sentence. Be more assertive. Like, is this what happens when you can't mute people? You just whine constantly? Just fucking... Just grow a pair.
This is absolutely not fair. God, I can't remember what I'm saying because it
Oh, it's not fair. Wow.
keeps going off course. So this is the problem. I think that when we started doing the Dutch protocol, Marci, I think you and I've actually never read your story of what it was like for you as a child. I have the typical horror story for someone like new at 5, 6, deep dysphoria, depression, like suicidal ideation, poor development, all that stuff.
Like, how often is she going to go off into these, like, sob stories? Like, oh, it's painful. It's painful. You want to complain about Marci monologuing when it's like, we have to sit through this.
I had the case as bad as you can have. So it's not like my empathy doesn't really pour out for these kids. And I know kids. I have kids that are very close to my life that have gotten this treatment, and I've seen them go from broken to like lovely young girls that do not have the damage that I had. And it's honestly inspirational. What my problem is I think WPATH is...
Yeah, we get this whole, like, older trans women wanting to live vicariously through these younger people. Oh, we have to allow these kids to transition young because then they won't be, like, broken like I am. Like, well, whatever the fuck that means.
Had a role in, frankly, misleading the public about what we knew about the science, as is evidenced by this Tennessee case, and has not been straight with parents or the public about what we...
Look at Marci's face right now. Look at Marci's face right now.
I think WPATH has had a role in, frankly, misleading the public about what we knew about the science.
It's quite rude. Like, you just want people not to talk badly of WPATH. Well, why not stick up for it? Why not combat the whatever allegation? Even if it's not always put very well, you know what I mean?
As is evidenced by this Tennessee case, and has not been straight with parents or the public about what we know. And I think the removal of the age restrictions, which there was a lawsuit about, I don't have to tell you this.
Age restrictions were it was
this
actually...
role...
We'll come back to age restrictions.
The role that WPATH played in not being straight with people, not being straight with parents about what we knew about the risks for these different cohorts, particularly female to males and non-binary people, I think has jeopardized everyone's healthcare. Because it's very clear, if you look at this entire cohort, they're not transitioning and acclimating particularly well. So I think, particularly with children, it is so critical that we are straightforward with parents.
Like, it's very vague, but, like, how many times do you see these, like, trans men that go on T for a month or two and then stop? I mean, you see them on YouTube fairly often with that Leo and Willie, Leo being an example of that. Luxander. How many other people? Like, testosterone is strong stuff, you know?
About what we know and don't know, which is why this Tennessee, what came out in the discovery there about the lack of evidence at WPATH for these policy changes, and your role in it was so disturbing.
WPATH went, the standards of care went from about 65 pages at version 7 to over 240 pages in the latest. And that was massive increase in the amount of literature and science that was referenced. It was an unprecedented document. WPATH has been about as clear as it can. It is accessible.
Being obsessed with the youth, if you think about it, is on brand when this whole movement is about looks. Yeah, to an extent. Yeah.
Online to anyone without any password. Any member of the public can go and access the standards of care anytime they'd like to. WPATH has more than 45 countries represented. Anyone with any sort of professional degree is
Well, we've already heard all of this. We just go back to the sales pitch, I guess.
welcome to join. I don't know how much more transparency we can offer. We have been
What was this, Tennessee? Did you say Tennessee? There was some issue there. I don't know if I'm familiar with this. Supreme Court reluctant to lift Tennessee's ban on hormone therapy, puberty blocker. Well, I mean, Jesus Christ, it's probably not going to happen now because of the executive order. What happened here? Reluctant to lift Tennessee's ban on hormone therapy, puberty blockers for children under 18. Gonna guess that's still there, I don't know, but 3 transgender teenagers. Oh, so people have been challenging it, basically. Let me guess, are these all female? What does trans mean and what is the cast review? Okay. What's this got to do with the Tennessee thing? Apparently nothing. This. Major trans case. Tennessee ban violates the US Constitution, blah, blah, blah. That's the one Chase Stranger was arguing at the Supreme Court. Ah, okay, well, they're probably fucked then. If that's who they've got working on it. I don't know, man. The 3 people can't get their way. Yeah. 3 teenagers. Yeah, I don't know, man. Seems like it's going the other way in general, what with executive orders and stuff. Tennessee probably doesn't want to be defunded or whatever.
You know, it's a pretty stand-up organization. 3 major medical organizations: the AMA, the APE, the American.
It's a stand-up organization coming from the former fucking president or whatever. Are you a bit biased, maybe? Is there a bit of bias going on here?
Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics all endorse gender-affirming care in much the same way that WPATH does, as does.
Wait, WPATH cannot be the ones being like every major medical. Surely, man. Surely. Like, they're going with what you're telling them because you're the supposed experts. Are you allowed to do this? This is weird.
The Endocrine Society. And some of these are international organizations or stand-up American with tens of thousands of members. And they're looking at the same evidence that you're apparently not looking at. And
the evidence, the way WPATH works is the Delphi approach, which is bringing these people in.
You're going to go down the path.
There's not studies you're pointing to. There's not studies. It's the Delphi approach. Let's just be straight about that.
Delphi approach. Delphi method is a tool for collecting experts' opinions on a specific issue for a series of questionnaires. There is 100% like circle jerking going on there. Why isn't a panel of experts? Well, I guess as long as the experts can actually be trusted, as long as they're not captured in any way, etc., etc. Maybe it's a thing that would work. I don't know.
There's not studies you're pointing to. There's not studies. It's the Delphi approach. Let's just be straight about that.
The Delphi approach was employed where sufficient evidence wasn't there, and then it was a matter of getting professional consensus.
What is the Delphi approach? I missed this. Brianna,
the Delphi process is, again, where
try to let Brianna get in there, but
no, that's okay. All right, let Marcy talk all she wants. She's doing my job for me. It's great.
You've said 2/3 of what we had to say on this conversation, so it's a little hard to tolerate because I'm still back on my list of things that I want to answer earlier in the talking about the disinformation.
We'll put a pin
scaring
in this
people
after
about testosterone and fetishistic cross-dressers getting care. I mean, I'm still stunned by that, Brianna, that you could actually you're just trying to.
I don't think it serves. You can go back to the standards from the 60s. It will show that
can
they
you
are
just define
not
the Delphi
served
approach, because I just don't know what it is.
The
so
Delphi approach. Now again,
this.
I was not a chapter lead. I was merely an author in the surgery subsection. But the Delphi process is a consensus-based model where professionals in the field, it's part of getting evidence-based medicine. It isn't just the science. It isn't just research that's published. So where there isn't published research to support an opinion, members, professionals working in that field are asked the question. And
is this kind of thing not giving these people way too much power potentially? That because there's not what are we trying to say here? Because there's not actual scientific evidence, well, what do the experts know? That sounds very dodgy. That could very, very quickly get out of hand. If you've got a group of people who are all supposed experts who have a certain ideology or whatever, very quickly get out of hand.
A significant majority are required to vote in favor of that recommendation in order for it to be.
Where there's no evidence, geez, that does not sound good to me. That's a red flag for sure.
Printed.
Brianna, what do you think of the evidence base that supports SOC8? So Marci, you talked about 200 pages. Have you evaluated that, and what do you think of it?
Well, I think the reason it's so expanded is because they've introduced all this new stuff into it, all these new categories. There's chapters.
They all cite each other. Yeah, true.
In there is not as long as I would like on non-binary people, but you've got the whole famous eunuch chapter. Congrats on that.
What's wrong with that? The reason it was included, I didn't have anything to do with adding that, but let me talk about the history of eunuchs, can we?
Let her finish on evidence, but I am intrigued by eunuchs. I am incredibly intrigued by the history of eunuchs, so we will not forget that. I want to get there.
So this is my problem, Alex, with the Delphi approach. Let me give you a really quick story of what I think the problem with...
When we're talking about eunuchs, you really are losing me so fucking hard. What's that got to do with being trans? Isn't that kind of similar to BIID? Should you chop someone's arm off because they're insisting they will be happier without one of their arms? Is the eunuch shit not kind of similar to that?
This entire, when we say research and care...
If you don't want to have a baby, have a fucking vasectomy, I guess. Wear condoms.
What it is. So when the DSM-5 came out, I was really, really surprised that we changed the standards from female to males and males to females to include all this non-binary stuff. And I was like, gosh, they must have done some study to justify this, to find out, to medically justify non-binary people and show that this care helps them. And what actually happened is they sat around, these experts, and they said, well, it's just really hard for therapists to put people in these categories. So we don't really know that this is a thing, and we don't really know that this helps them.
Kind of funny, no member of WPATH would even talk with Peter Boghossian when he was in Lisbon during the latest WPATH conference, even offered $200. Well, that's how these people work. It's possible that Marci Bowers thought this was going to be a more chill conversation. But, I don't know. Anyone that's been, openly criticizing WPATH to an extent Peter Boghossian, there's no way someone's going to talk to him. And again, it suggests that these people are not very honest.
Them, but we'll just let the people do it.
Where do you come up with this? You're not a member of WPATH, are you?
I'll 100% show it to you. I'll 100% show it to you, Marci. I'm going to finish my...
I like how Brianna talks out of this side of her mouth, and then Marci talks out of that side of her mouth. It's kind of satisfying, the symmetry.
Know that this is a thing, and we don't really know that this helps them, but we'll just let the people do it.
Where do you come up with this? You're not a member of WPATH, are you?
I'll 100% show it to you. I'll 100% show it to you, Marci. I'm going to finish my...
Sorry, this is goofiness. Let's let you...
This is the standard.
If you can't be sensible,
Marci,
you need to be sensible, or I'm not going to to stay here and listen.
I looked into it, so let Brianna finish.
This person's so full of shit. It's funny because it's funny, but she's actually quite gross.
This is the standard.
If you can't be sensible,
Marci,
you need to be sensible, or I'm not going to stay here and listen.
Let her make a point at least.
I looked into it.
I'll show you the memo.
So let Brianna finish, and I will just try to summarize as best.
There is a memo you can see out there justifying this change. It was done. It was by everyone that wrote that chapter in there. This is the general problem.
Where would you get a memo?
Is we're not doing studies. The problem with the Delphi approach here is we're making all this policy and saying, well, we're the experts and we're just voting and we're saying this is best for people based on our...
A lot of the time, it wouldn't have been their choice to become one. Yeah, true.
based on like what we have here.
It's based on clinical experience, which is important. Not everything.
Like clinical experience, like would you go by that alone? Or because we're experienced clinically, we can make decisions about non-binary care where there's no science available. This kind of seems like an overreach of power, almost. Like they've been able to consolidate power in how trans people are treated. And now we can just make up a bunch of stuff because we've put ourselves in these positions of power. It's not great. It doesn't sound good at all.
Is written in a scientific chapter.
The membership of WPATH is filled with a very specific cohort. So we're telling people that we have scientific evidence for all of this stuff, as in studies justifying certain courses of treatment, and it does not exist. These studies for trans people are garbage, Marci. You know it's garbage, and if they weren't garbage, you would reference them.
The amount of insult. Let's see. You called WPATH garbage.
I said the studies were garbage.
You said I was dishonest. What else do you want to say?
You're being dishonest today.
Okay.
The studies are what they are. They go into peer-reviewed journals.
Do you really think trans healthcare studies are
Wait, is this edited, or does she just kind of cut off occasionally?
garbage?
You said I was dishonest. What else do you want to say?
Being dishonest.
She is dishonest. Marci Bowers is fucking dishonest as shit. Like, she's like grinning her way through this whole thing. Like, it's very dodgy.
Today.
Okay.
The studies are what they are. They go into peer-reviewed journals.
Do you really think trans healthcare studies are
where
good?
there is not peer-reviewed evidence in journals? The Delphi process is a process where clinicians, people with experience in the field, experience about people who are living their lives in possibly a non-binary way, since you brought that chapter up, and they're dictating to clinicians who have been thinking of things in a binary way, maybe we need to expand our treatment protocols and be...
Instead of gaslighting story time, she could have said WPATH chose to relate non-binary on a small, non-scientific foundation. Yeah, I mean, it's just Brianna Wu. The sad part is, would Marci Bowers talk to anyone else that's, like, critical? I don't know if she even knew that, like, Brianna Wu would be this critical going into it. Like, maybe that's what it takes to even be able to talk to someone like this, is for them to think you're much, like, kinder towards them than you actually are. These guys have way too much ego to listen to each other. Yeah, it's getting pretty ridiculous.
Less rigid about how they are defined.
So let's
this is important because this was identified by detransitioners in the large Kinnan-McKinnon study. This was the single most important point that came out of that study.
There's no health. I want to do those studies. If it helps them, we should.
The thing is, like, detransitioners who are then going to, like, non-binary. That sounds like failed transition to me. I don't know. It's going to depend, I guess, but I don't know.
Do it.
They're studied. Look at Kinnan-McKinnon.
Let me identify what the studies are in essence. I didn't read all 200 pages, but I went through the studies. Okay, so there is the Delphi approach, which is not peer-reviewed research. There were 3 peer-reviewed research studies referenced, okay? And this is for SOC8.
Not the whole, the whole document? That's not true.
Specifically in support of gender-affirming care. For gender-affirming care.
There's decades of research. There are longitudinal studies looking at... You're talking about prospective studies?
I'm talking about the ones that I
In other words, the ones that are done before the care is delivered? Prospective studies are difficult to organize in this area of medicine, but go ahead.
There's the Dutch protocol, which is real research and has been complicated, but there's a reference to that.
Yeah, we got the Dutch protocol, which most trans children shit is based on. In the UK, they tried to replicate the Dutch protocol. I think it was Hall et al., but I can't remember offhand. They couldn't find the same result, that being that transitioning a child will improve their mental health outcome. They couldn't find that same result.
There is another one around hormones with 1 year of follow-up and saw...
WPATH peer reviews their own papers. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, you could very easily hand your paper off to someone else who has all the same beliefs and opinions as you. They make sure it's like, it says the right thing and, oh yeah, it's fine. Who knows what they actually think, you know? Anyone who has to navel gaze this much about their own identity as narc traits, yeah, maybe. It's certainly a bit of a breeding ground for narcissism. I do worry about that kind of thing, for sure. I mean, you meet someone in the pub or something, do you really want to sit there talking about their identity with them for, like, significant lengths of time, you know what I mean?
modest support around.
You're talking, this is about treatment in adolescence, of course, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. For adolescents. Yeah. And then there was another protocol that didn't have results. What I'm trying to get at and understand just personally, and as you said, and you said this, it's difficult to do good peer-reviewed research into gender-affirming care for adolescents. In particular, I think to really do it well, you need to, follow on, you need to follow people for 15 to 20 years through.
I love the agreement phases. It's like just out of nowhere.
Their full
Long-term studies.
fertility and understand like how do they feel about various side effects when they're 35. So it's very hard to do this research. Yeah. I think that having done a deep dive here, my understanding is that the actual peer-reviewed research that supports gender-affirming care is
for minors. Please say
for minors. Yes, for minors is not great. However, it's not.
But yet,
not great.
But there's decades of experience from adults that are
correct, which is different.
Okay,
which is
yeah. If they transitioned as adults, then we're talking about a very different thing, though. Like they didn't go through like puberty blockers. They had a normal puberty and then changed some stuff. You can't really like compare them that much. It's a very different process if you never went through puberty and then take like cross-sex hormones, surely.
And that's okay.
They may be different populations. I mean, Brianna brought this out. This is an important point that she did bring out, is that this demographic, especially this changing demographic in adolescence, it's a concern.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about a wider problem with these studies, Marci.
Changing demographic is a concern. We're worried about these people suddenly appearing with gender dysphoria in their teens. But also rapid onset gender dysphoria is a largely discredited acronym that conservatives push. But you'll literally define it perfectly and just not use the term. And then suddenly it's fine. Okay, bro.
Because let's really be honest here.
There's a limited number, but they still are in generally supportive.
This is my problem with these studies. And I urge people to just go look at
Marci will admit there's a limited amount of studies. It's crazy. But you're gonna transition kids off the back of that. Like, really?
at any random chapter of SOC 8, go look at the studies that they cite, go look at trans healthcare studies in general. You can actually sit down and read them because there's not that many of them. And this is my problem.
There's a lot of research, pages and pages after each chapter.
Marci, they tend to conflate a whole bunch of different cohorts together. So they put all of us into this giant soup. So for instance, she mentioned knee surgery. It's a surgery I've had, meniscus repair surgery for running. One of the first things they did when they developed that surgery was they went through and really tightly defined their patient population, the kind of injury we had to justify that kind of surgery.
Gender a Wider Lens podcast influenced the Dutch researchers who wrote the Dutch protocol. I'll have to have a look. Thank you.
It was really, really precise the way they do that. That's one of the first things they do when they develop that. For this particular surgery I had, very strictly defined patient protocol. If you go read these trans studies, they put all of us together like this giant soup and try to draw conclusions with it. It is absolutely...
Wait, I think I know what she's talking about. Hang on. I think I know what she's talking about. And I think she's actually right about this. That being Brianna.
The kind of cohorts together. So they look at the studies that they cite, go look at trans healthcare studies in general. You can actually sit down and read them because there's not that much.
Yeah, because there was this, what was it? It was one of the, what is that person's name? For fuck's sake, man. Bustos et al. This one here. Because what Brianna's saying is kind of true. Because, like, this is a meta-study, okay? So it's 27 studies pooling almost 8,000 transgender people. These studies being used. Like, here's one from 93, here's one from 98. What else we got? 1989 Blanchard, by the way. I thought he was, like, discredited, disproved, all that shit. He's in this study that is used constantly to say, well, the trans regret rate for surgery is 1%. And by the way, we're lumping every surgery in when we say this. We've got 1989, we got 97, we got 2006, 2014. Like, the cohorts being presented at each of these are not going to be that similar because things have changed so much between like 1989, like before I was even fucking born, and like nowadays. There's a very different cohorts. We've seen like FTMs soar past MTFs in terms of like which there is more of, you know? We're seeing a reduction in like the age at which people are presenting with this kind of thing. And we're just sticking all of these different studies together to make like an overall conclusion. Like Brianna's actually kind of speaking the truth here.
That many of them. And this is my problem.
There's a lot of research.
Is
pages and pages after each chapter.
Marci, they tend to conflate a whole bunch of different cohorts together. So
yeah, this is true. This is what we've been looking at just now. And this study is used to like push the 1% regret rate. You have more chance to regret your knee surgery than your gender affirming surgery. Let's ignore the fact that there's many different kinds of gender affirming surgery. They're all lumped in together. Initially, this almost 8 grand number, this looks impressive. This is a good sample size, a lot of people. But it starts to look less good when you realize they've all had different kinds of surgeries. They're from way back 35 years ago to now. So it's not a great study. And Brianna's actually right with what she's saying here.
They put all of us into this giant soup. So, for instance, she mentioned knee surgery. It's a surgery I've had, meniscus repair surgery for running. One of the first things they did when they developed that surgery was they went through and really tightly defined their patient population, the kind of injury we had to justify that kind of surgery. It was really, really precise the way they do that. That's one of the first things they do when they developed that for this particular surgery I had. Very strictly defined patient protocol. If you go read these trans studies, they put all of us together like this giant soup and try to draw conclusions with it. It is absolutely...
There is definitely truth in what Brianna's saying. It's so easy to just say, oh, well, that's not true, whenever someone says something that's inconvenient. And that seems to be what Marci is doing. She doesn't seem like honest to me at all.
True. Go read it in the cohort breakdown. They will put FTMs in there with MTFs, with non-binaries, with trans femmes, with trans mass, and they'll draw all these big conclusions. And one of the consequences of that in these studies is it makes it very hard for us to go down to any one of these cohorts and drill deeply and draw conclusions. The ends are also very small. These are underfunded studies. They're not of great quality. Do you think that's a problem?
Adult care has been shown to be beneficial.
Like a politician, which I guess makes sense. It's painful.
Yes.
When protocols were put in place for adolescents, the presumption was that would only extend and probably benefit people because they would...
The presumption. We're talking about a presumption when we're talking about like a protocol for transitioning children. Is like, oh, just everything she says just sounds crazy to me.
Not have to overcome the obstacle of having puberty-related physical changes. In other words, if they could block puberty before it began, then when they went through their desired puberty, they would not have...
They went through their desired puberty. You don't just get to pick which puberty you have. You go through one, and that's the one that happens as you grow older naturally. You can't just get the other puberty if you decide you don't like the one you're going to have. It doesn't work that way.
Have an Adam's apple development, let's say, or a voice drop for trans feminine persons.
Yeah, you can avoid the male puberty and those effects, but you're not going through female puberty. The way these people talk about this is crazy to me.
Or breast development for trans masculine persons, meaning they would potentially avoid...
Like, if they're happy to say that, like, oh, well, a trans woman takes hormones and then grows breasts, and that equals, like, female puberty, then you're kind of saying that a man can go through fucking female puberty just by eating too much. So, I don't know, man.
Future surgeries, and from that, potentially a higher quality of care. Based on
and less dysphoria, right?
In the future, that is,
yeah, it's the same kind of stuff that Helen Webley does with this belief that puberty is just interchangeable. It's like actually kind of terrifying, and it shows how much like the language and the way we talk about this have been like captured, and that these people have a lot of power in this field, and it's terrifying. You just make up what you want, and then people will just agree with you because you're the experts. Is actually quite terrifying.
Is if you can accurately identify people for whom treatment fits. And that's the key question. And can you also give them a proper informed consent that they can look forward to the lack of, let's say the lack of, well, the one thing that has bothered me consistently is that by giving gender affirming blockers, that precludes any chance for them to have fertility versus waiting a couple of years into puberty before choosing
Yeah, so again, like, these kids are now having to decide whether they want their own kids. Are they always going to feel that way?
to block. And
it seems like they haven't really thought about any of this. Well, the presumption is it'll be easier if you don't go through puberty in the first place. But like, it's weird, man. Weird to listen to.
And so you may be aware that I have a bit more of a conservative viewpoint on that matter as compared to my peers. But I think there are people moving towards the opinion that I have, and that I'd like to see puberty blockers initiated later. In other words, slightly after the onset of puberty. I think that ultimately will be the response.
Listen, this is consistent with her whole thing about Tanner stage 2.
Choice. But that's going to take prospective studies. That's going to be looking at people and deciding, how did they do with puberty blockers initiated at Tanner 2 versus Tanner 3 or 4. And how do those patients look? Those
are stages of puberty, just for the audience.
Those are stages of puberty.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Dutch protocol, remember, recommended puberty blockers beginning at age 14 and then cross-sex hormones later. So that was fully through puberty before those. And then it was the American Norman Spack and others who began, they said, well, why not avoid puberty changes altogether and start this at Tanner 2? Mm-hmm. And rightfully,
and that's where they can't orgasm. But then, according to according to Marci, who cares? You're a woman.
Criticism, could be there. Was there data to support that? No. But the presumption was that the benefits would extend.
It's all experimental. It's all made up. Like this, why did she even agree to this? This is making her look terrible. You're talking about like people's kids. It's not like you went through that process. It's not like Brianna did. This is making her look fucking horrible, is it not?
And to the earlier grouping, if you could identify those persons properly. And Dr. Spack pointed out that it was the onset of puberty, those changes that aggravated dysphoria, that was a deciding factor in who could be, we don't like using the word truly transgender, but those for whom their trans feelings would persist.
Casually talking about medically experimenting on children. Yeah, this she looks terrible in this. Fucking hell.
So I think this is where I think we've got healthcare is now about politics, but I think the politics are really hard to avoid here right now. Marci, I don't have to tell you that the United States is really turning away from access, like children's access to care, in a way that terrifies me. And I think you and I both understand what it was like to be that scared.
Yeah, if you can identify them, yeah, true. I'm not aware of there being any real methods to identify what kids might desist, because there is evidence that some of these kids presenting with gender dysphoria might desist if just going through their puberty. There isn't really a way to tell those people apart. And I don't know, I'm willing to hear more about how this shit works, but it sounds like a lot of it's just kind of plucked out of thin air, based on adult care, when those adults have gone through puberty. It's going to look very different if you're not even going through that in the first place. It's highly experimental. Blair predicted 8 years ago that gatekeeping would fail, and here we are. Yeah.
Little child that desperately needed some help, and to see your body changing into something that was very difficult to live with. This is really, really, really scary to me. And I understand, as I do my job, I cannot base the policies I advocate on my personal story, but I also know the consequence of that healthcare not being there. We did not have gender affirming clinics in Mississippi in 1980. So,
and that adds greatly to stress.
Yeah. Of course, it really broke. When you did my vaginoplasty in Colorado, I was a broken person, still trying to deal with the trauma. I've got my...
Let me keep going on this. There's points at which Brianna's doing quite well, I think. There's points where she kind of brings things up. And you can tell when Marci is on the ropes, because oh, that's not true. Oh, well, that's just nonsense. That kind of shit. But then we just... I don't know, man. I don't know.
My head on pretty good now, but it took me a long time to come back from that. So I understand there's a human cost here, but I really think there's got to be a reckoning with the fact that I think we've I think we've not messaged multiple things.
WPATH is not the enemy.
That's what I think it is.
The enemy, like, how old are you? Not about good guys and bad guys. It's about the fact that you've been pushing like highly experimental treatments on children for issues that only raise a concern because the people with it might kill themselves, which is something that seems very heavily like reinforced by like doctors and stuff. What trauma? I don't know. I zone out to be honest.
But we can talk about that. I think there are multiple things we have
Who's the
not
better
done.
advocate for
I
trans
think
people
there are
than WPATH?
not. I think there are not multiple things we're not doing well with parents. So I think first of all,
I was a broken, poor black child, Brianna Wu.
I think that no one needed to tell me I wanted to be a girl when I was 5 years old. No one needed to tell me that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's all I could think about ever. And I think that this political project with the best of intentions, to put this material into schools, to cause children to deeply question their gender.
No one's putting material. You're not even listening to what she's saying. No one's putting this material in schools.
And I think that this political project with the best of intentions, to put this material into schools, to cause children to deeply question their gender.
She's not even listening. She didn't even wait for Brianna to finish. Material in schools that makes children question their gender identity. We fucking know this is happening. What's the one I always go for? It's this one. This is a UK thing, I think. It's Pop and Ollie thing. This is like materials for schools to give out. Like, you can see, look, it's right fucking here. There's a book about a girl who's actually a boy. We watched a video. We listened to a reading of this book, this Jamie thing, where this girl puts on like boy clothes and cuts their hair, and suddenly they're a man now. And like these things get like sold to schools, like resources. This is stuff for schools. She won't even listen. That's not happening. Oh, that's not happening.
And to suggest that they
HRC reading I'm Jazz to young kids. Yeah, but that doesn't happen. Listen. God, it's so slimy. Whenever it's something inconvenient, oh, that's not happening. Why don't you just own it?
can mix and match their gender. I think that it is objectively confusing the kids. And I can tell you, as someone who works in democratic politics, it is turning not right-wing.
Have you been?
Doesn't happen. There's a fucking cottage industry. What are you fucking talking about?
Have you been into an elementary school?
Marci?
I have, actually.
You can talk to Democratic, not just
yeah, you probably don't want to admit that in public.
Conservatives across this country. They are really upset.
What, were you prospecting for future patients? Was that it?
Upset because they think that their children are being confused.
Well, fortunately, the Department of Education has been dismantled, so I guess we don't have to worry
for their
about that
development.
anymore.
And we have no long-term studies of.
Wait, so because there's no Department of Education, the schools aren't going to teach this? Okay, bro. Okay. So it's not happening, but it was, but now it's not because the Department of Education. Like, what are you on? What are you on? Just admit some of this shit. This is making things worse. There's like steadfast refusal to acknowledge literally anything. Sometimes cutting Brianna off to disagree when she hadn't even finished what she was fucking saying.
About what introducing these ideas into children
They're not
very young
introducing
does to their
ideas.
development.
They're not interested.
They're not introducing any ideas to children. There's no teacher training. Albeit, listen, this is in the UK, not the US. You really think this isn't happening in the US, then you need to get your fucking brain checked. Digital training video, all about gay shit, all about gender identities. You can show up. Take the first steps to becoming an LGBT plus inclusive and welcoming school. Useful explanations. Activity prompts. And then they have like these like resources and stuff. Classroom resources. You can get these like posters that include Nikki tutorials. Never know how to do this. He's not going to let me like open a new window because then I might be able to download it, I'm guessing. 3-step process. It's not happening. Okay, maybe it's happening when it's rare. 3, it's happening is a good thing. Yeah, true. Jesus Christ. Like, every time something's not convenient, she just says that it's not real. This is pathetic. Why do this? This is making her look fucking horrible. Oh my god, Samantha Lux. This was disappointing. Brianna is nowhere near an expert on medicine. Do you have to be? Plenty of the stuff she's saying is true, but how the fuck would you know? Like, the problem is... Yeah, Bowers is insufferable. I agree. I'm not a fan of Brianna Wu. I think as it goes on, she's like actually bringing some points. You know what I mean? I know, it's like quite cringe.
They're introducing...
The second part of this is we have not...
Yeah, a toddler got kicked out of a UK school. We've been looking at stuff about that.
The second part of this, which for the Tennessee case came out, is it with lowering the protocols for children and not being straight with parents about the science behind it. I think the WPATH has not been straightforward about it. We've not been
WPATH hasn't had
suicidality.
They're not going into school systems. They're not recruiting. They're we're
I'm
underserved.
talking about a different subject now, which is you're changing. You're talking.
So
you're
long,
making an
Brianna. It's
argument.
really
I'm not
difficult
making.
to even.
It's exactly the same shit. Like, they're both doing it to each other.
Respond. You don't even get a chance.
Yeah.
You just spew out misinformation, and then you don't let anyone talk.
Like, she won't say which misinformation, just anything inconvenient. Oh, that's not happening. What misinformation?
Fuck.
No.
It's not true. We'll run the counter when this goes out. You'll see you've talked much more.
Oh, okay.
So what I was saying is you're now doing something you've done multiple times here, which is you're taking something from a past subject and you're taking it to attack a current subject. We're talking 2 things here. I'm saying the political project, which I did not say was associated with WPATH, to bring gender ideology into schools is confusing children. It's creating enemies from parents.
Who's doing this, Brianna?
Who's doing this? Plenty of companies are giving resources to schools to teach them about these gender identities, plenty of which were coined on Tumblr, by the way.
Let me hear what your sources for your conspiracy theories are.
Evidence for
Who's bringing these
conspiracy theories?
Ideas of gender confusion into schools?
Marci using from a past subject, and
I want to get what she's saying here again.
what I was saying is you're now doing something you've done multiple times here, which is you're
just like grinning the whole time. Like, I think she knows in a way. She knows that there's some heavy dishonesty going on, and that she's cut her teeth on stuff that's like highly experimental and actually quite damaging to some of the people that they're doing these treatments to.
taking something from a past subject and you're taking it to attack a current subject. We're talking 2 things here. I'm saying the political project, which I did not say was associated with WPATH, to bring gender ideology into schools is confusing children. It's creating enemies from parents.
Who's doing this, Brianna? Let me hear what your sources for your conspiracy theories are.
Evidence for
Who's bringing these ideas of gender confusion into schools?
Marci,
can you just answer that?
I'm going to finish my point.
So there was that. What else was there? Shit, we were looking at like kids' books. There was a really weird one. There was a few really weird ones. Can we please? Hang on. Oh, what was it called? We watched a whole bunch of stuff. It was this guy.
A house for everyone. Lunchtime is our favorite part of the day. We build a house for everyone. We collect everything we need from around the playground.
So who's introducing all this like gender confusion shit to kids? People that write books like this. And then schools that purchase books like this. Maybe they've got some activist teachers in their ranks, who knows?
I'll get all the sticks we need, said Ivy. It won't take long. She is the fastest runner in our group. She gathers large sticks from all over the playground. Ivy is a girl. She likes to have her hair cut really short. Her favorite clothes are short and a t-shirt. And she up against the fence. Alex does not feel just a boy or just a girl. They feel very uncomfortable being called he or she. They take the sticks that Ivy has collected and carefully balance them up.
Sorry, there's a lot of lag going on. I do apologize. Just one more time. We'll get Marci Bowers spouting off one more time.
with WPATH to bring gender ideology into schools is confusing children. It's creating enemies from parents.
Who's doing this, Brianna? Let me hear what your sources for your conspiracy theories are.
Evidence for the
Who's bringing these ideas of gender confusion into schools?
Against the fence. Alex does not feel just a boy or just a girl. They feel very uncomfortable being called he or she. Alex prefers people to use their name, Alex, or they.
Yep, there's a mystery. Who's bringing these weird concepts to young children? Absolute mystery.
Marci,
can you just answer that?
I'm going to finish my point, and you can sit there and listen to it and try to engage with it so we can have a discussion here. So that is one part of it. The second
Who's
part
bringing
is
this ideology? I want to know.
WPATH's lack of transparency with parents about every single part of this. We've overstated the case about how beneficial this is for children.
Ooh, you're not on you're not a member of WPATH. We're going to actually lower. Can I just finish?
I don't like the children's literature. A part of me is sympathetic at the trans kids who became adults. I don't know what to do with that. Oh, I don't know, man. Like, transitioning after puberty is not, in fact, a death sentence. We know little about, like, what are these lifespans going to be looking like? These kids that are, like, transitioning now. There's a lot of questions when it comes to, like, long term. Like, this might be way worse for you than just waiting until you're an adult. Who knows? School I work at hires a lot of non-binary 20-year-old substitute teachers that are still wearing masks and usually the ones bringing this curriculum in. Yeah. Anyone in that kind of position can start doing what Brianna's saying. Marci Bowers wants to know, like, oh, who's bringing this kind of stuff into kids? Well, people are producing this kind of content. Very, very easy to find. And teachers are bringing these into the classroom. Like, they don't always need even the blessing of, like, their head teacher or whatever to do so. There's a slew of videos with dads reading these books back to school counsel. It's basically porn for kids. Yeah, some of them are really strange. Like, that guy that I was watching, he's read quite a few of them. I'm guessing he probably didn't intend for it to be a resource for, like, a transphobe like me or whatever. But it's actually been quite helpful.
The age restrictions were going to lower the minimum ages for certain procedures. And instead, we thought about it. There was a lot of input. We had an open forum where membership was allowed to put input into the final version of the standards of care. And ultimately, it was a bit at the 11th hour, but WPATH elected to drop back to a more conservative viewpoint, which was to remove the age restrictions and go back to the default position, which is the standards that we set in version 7. That's it. So it was version 8 basically is version 7 where it comes to the age restrictions. That's it. We didn't remove age restrictions. We didn't say that it could be done now at any age, but what we did is we said it goes back to the version 7 age restrictions, which means that its care is delivered on an individualized basis based on decisions.
Wait, but an individualized basis isn't a restriction of age. That's no restriction. That's telling the doctor to figure it out themselves. No?
Between parents, family, and the individual.
Yeah, so you're full of shit. What? I guess if we're saying, oh, the standards of care haven't changed because there wasn't really a restriction in age beforehand either, then I guess. But, like, that doesn't sound good, you understand? You're kind of admitting that there is no restriction on age. Just let the doctor figure it out. Well, what's the doctor going to do, especially in the US? Yep, you're trans, give me your money. There we go. Amazing.
That its care is delivered on an individualized basis based on decisions between parents, family, and the individual. Physicians and the individual.
So just to make sure I understand that, there was no age in 7, and then there was an 8, and then you got rid of it to be back the same as 7? That's basically...
That's right. Generally,
it
was presumed to be the age of majority, which is 18 in this country for the most part. And that was the generally accepted age. But the lack of a specific, it didn't say it had to be 18 or older. It left it open because there were instances in harm reduction, especially for trans masculine persons who were potentially in vulnerable situations where their breasts could be a marker for transness and could put them, Boys Don't Cry, the trans boy that was killed, that movie, that kind of situation where the presence of breast material would be dangerous. And so in those...
But how is the How is it dangerous in that case? Because it's outing them? I don't know.
Those cases, surgery could be instituted.
All right.
So
I don't have a
version 8
problem.
was going to drop that, and write it in. But what I was afraid of, this is just my own personal view, I was afraid that it was just going to put a very arbitrary, because it wasn't based on, you're right, in the sense it wasn't based on science. It was based on, this was where Delphi played in, but it was just putting an arbitrary.
Wait, so whether to restrict by age or not wasn't like something they came up with scientifically. It's just
arbitrary age limit, let's say 16. And that would mean that all you had to do is get over that hurdle, and then everyone would feel entitled to surgery at that age. That bothered me. And I much preferred the assumption being the version 7 version, where it was generally 18 with individual exceptions, rather than...
Wait, so how is it generally 18 if there's individual exceptions? And the exceptions are based on, like, any individual doctor and their patient. So there's no, like, there's nothing then. Wasn't the presence of breast material. What was it? Boys don't cry? It's 1999 thing. Brandon Tina. Yeah, so what's the logic then? It was that because they had breasts, that was like outing? Is that what we're saying? Like, because someone, I guess, identified them as being trans? But I mean, most trans people don't pass very well. There's really not much you can do about that kind of shit. Finding his chest, blah, blah, blah. Because he was in the female section of the jail. And then he pulled his pants down to show. But yeah, she's, well, according to Wikipedia at least, Jesus Christ. Kind of talking bollocks there, unfortunately.
And an entitled age hurdle where you reached it and you could have surgery. I didn't like that. So what we settled on was more conservative. Okay?
Sure, I do not have
I don't see how that's conservative when you're basically leaving it up to any individual doctor, patient, etc.
problem necessarily with leaving exact limits between a patient, a parent, and their doctor in these cases. I really don't. I understand.
Wait, if you don't have a problem with that, why are you questioning the age of consent and all that in the first place? Why are you questioning, like, age restrictions in the first place when you're happy to basically accept any exception, is what it sounds like.
And I think your logic is sound. My point, which I would invite you to engage with, is that I think it makes the political sell much harder for parents in this country to believe in gender-affirming care for minors, something polls are disastrous on right now. I truly don't think it could be saved, and the reason I'm here today is trying to...
Yeah, I'll give Brianna something. I complain often that these, like, trans rights types, they seem extremely reluctant to think politically. At least Brianna does actually try to, and acknowledges there are certain issues that poll extremely poorly. Trans sports, transitioning children. And it's weird because listening to Marci Bauer is like listening to a politician, but a politician that refuses to think politically. I have this problem so often when listening to, like, to the kind of people that stick up for like WPATH and stuff, from trans rights activists. Like, supposedly we're a politicized group, we're the political movement or some shit, but then you won't think politically, you won't care about, like, the optics, you won't care about what's actually popular. Why not push the kinds of things that would benefit trans people that people don't really have a problem with? Instead, we go for things like sports and, like, kids all the time. And we wonder why the tide turned against us.
Make an environment where someone credible can make the case for this. And I think what has happened is there's been a lack of honesty with parents, and I think we've not been straight with the science.
That
and I
is
think
so
the stuff
not
that came
fair.
out in the
That's
Tennessee
just not
lawsuit against you was disastrous, Marci. It was
Oh, there was a lawsuit against her as well. I didn't see that last time. There's an alliance defending freedom, bias, etc., etc., etc. Masturbate, partisan law. General Scamatti will defend Tennessee's law before the U.S. Supreme Court. Claims that they represent evidence-based treatment guidelines for children experience. Well, we know it's not evidence-based because she's even admitted that there's not much data on a lot of this shit, and some of it's done by like consensus from so-called experts. Like, it's terrifying. WPATH goals to justify. I mean, they're like editorializing a lot there, concluding in a whole bunch of different ways. United States of America versus the I'm not seeing much. We'll just keep going.
Absolutely
I'm not aware of any lawsuit. I'm not in any lawsuit in Tennessee.
If you want to reference the arguments,
There's no lawsuit against me in Tennessee.
There was the amicus brief in the Tennessee case.
arguments.
Hang on. Let me just check something.
There's no lawsuit against me in Tennessee.
There was.
See how she's grinning when she says that? There's no lawsuit against me in Tennessee.
Suit against you was disastrous, Marci.
Like, did she mean like against WPATH? Is that how we're weaseling out of this one? Look at Marci's face when she says this.
It was
Tennessee,
absolutely disastrous.
I'm not aware of any lawsuit. I'm not in any lawsuit in Tennessee.
If you want to reference the arguments,
There's no lawsuit against me in Tennessee.
The way she grins at, come on, bro. Come on. You know, okay, you know.
There was the amicus brief in the Tennessee case, which went through your emails and WPATH emails point by point by point, and had you getting your story straight behind the scenes.
That's
in a
not
way
a-
that
that's not a lawsuit.
It does not give credibility to WPATH. It does not make parents feel like there's actual science.
the smoking
You're
gun?
handing our enemies. You're handing our enemies
It's
everything
what
they
we
need to
call in the
destroy our
medical field
care
myth
because
murder.
you cannot
A
be
bunch of
straightforward
emails
with parents,
that were just
Marci.
personal.
You've got to be
professional
straightforward with
exchanges.
them
That's
about
we call
what
a
you
nothing
know.
burger. Nothing
You've
burger.
got to know, and you've got to be straight with them.
let me use a very specific example.
You're handing our enemies. You're handing our enemies everything
what
they
we
need to
call in the
destroy. Feel like there's does not give credibility to WPATH. It does not make parents feel like there's actual science.
smoking
You're
gun?
handing our enemies. You're handing our enemies everything
what
they
we
need to
call in the
destroy our
medical field
care
myth
because
murder.
you cannot
A
be
bunch of
straightforward
emails
with parents,
that were just
Marci.
personal.
You've got to be
professional exchanges.
straightforward with
That's
them
we call
about what you
nothing
know.
burger.
Oh, the WPATH files were a nothing burger. Okay.
Nothing
You've
burger.
got to know, and you've got to be straight with them.
Let me use a very specific example, Brianna.
It's not funny. You've been lying to parents.
She's quite sinister.
No one's been lying. It's
You
it's
100% have been
straightforward.
lying.
If you want to,
Yeah, how many of these parents understand how little evidence there is for any of this trans kid stuff? And how much it's like just medical consensus between experts? I wonder.
if you want to use a specific example from the WPATH files, there were the quotes like, people from a Zoom call saying things like, it's always good in theory that you talk about fertility preservation with a 14-year-old, but I know I'm talking to a blank wall. Like things like that, where, there's a bunch of doctors nodding about, they have.
Where does it say the doctors are nodding?
Oh, I watched, it's a Zoom call with 6 people, and I think at least 3 were nodding.
Well,
when he
that's
said,
that doesn't give good optics.
She's like just feign ignorance whenever it's convenience.
No, it wasn't great. And I think like when it comes,
fertility is important. I think I already mentioned that earlier in the
Right, and
in the
it's why
call. That's a big thing that I would
huge.
I would have been if I was a trans kid and somebody was going to block my puberty and not talk about fertility. I'd be pretty upset.
Well,
What? If you were a trans kid, can you imagine being like a child?
but it's not about talking. He said it's, he talks about fertility preservation.
Who is
but
he?
But at 14 years old, it's like I'm talking to a blank wall.
Who is he?
I will find it out. It's in one of the videos from whatever the files were released. They also said things like they haven't even had biology in high school, or they can't talk about it in a serious way.
This
which
is a
always bothered
WPATH
me.
member for sure.
Yeah,
Said
these
this?
are all WPATH members. Yes. So the point
Well,
is, this is
I
complicated.
would disagree with whoever said
Literally in the WPATH leaks.
that. And
Yeah, it's these things are
But
complicated.
it hurts public trust when this stuff gets out there. You understand that, yes?
it's not a yes or no answer, Brianna, and I think you should know that.
Do you
But
not
I
think
think
I'm pretty sure the WPATH files have like impacted trust in WPATH. Like, you got some people playing defense for you There's some retarded articles coming out from Aaron Reed claiming there's like 216 errors, and then you never see any of them apart from like a small handful, half of which Aaron is literally wrong about. You've got that fucking retard, what's his name? Evan Urquhart or something. It's just a bunch of forum posts. Assign Media, that's the one. Utterly shitty fucking outlet. Basically as bad as Aaron in the Morning, if not worse. Like, why would you even deny that? Obviously, people saw the WPATH leaks and some of them, like, some were not, like, down with this shit.
WPATH's reputation is destroyed?
Care is delivered. This is the same thing about the informed consent. One person can give a very good informed consent, and I'll be honest, it's very difficult to do that with the weight of giving enough balance to what the pros and cons really are. To give true informed consent, it has to be quite a masterful performance in that it has to be delivered with true integrity. And that's a high bar for many people.
That is a high bar. I mean, do you think that is a bar that can scale throughout every gender clinician and physician?
They do such a good job. But again, this is why in the way the members that I know that practice, we talk about longevity, and it's a persistence. It's a process. It is not a rushed. It's not a vending machine type of process, nor should it ever be that way. It takes a lot of thought. Hormones are serious business. Surgery is a major, major step. And it's got to be we've got to be better at defining who.
I have fun, Spencer. That sounds a lot more fun than watching this. Like, Marci is actually annoying me now. I actually think this person is quite gross.
Who is our best candidate? And the point is that it takes a great deal of thought and sincerity.
It takes a great deal of thought, which you're trusting like young children with in some cases. And you're going to say, oh, well, if I was a teenager and they didn't discuss my fertility with me, like, is that going to be on every trans teenager's mind? Do many of them even want kids necessarily? But then they might not always feel that way. It's just, there's always a way out. It's so pathetic.
And passion to deal with these families in difficult times through a difficult period of their lives. And you don't rush that process.
Yeah, if it's not a rush, it kind of seems like at least for some of the providers of healthcare, that they're kind of insubordinate. They're kind of not listening to you. And you don't seem very bothered about trying to bring them under control, from what I can see.
This is why puberty blockers did make a lot of sense, because it put puberty on pause. And it did so with an incredible amount of safety in a medication that's been used for 50 years in the same age population without side effects.
That's not true. They'd be younger because they're having precocious puberty. That doesn't even that is like, makes no sense.
Effects or complications. And in
fully reversible, blah, 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 blah.
that sense is completely reversible.
I always read posts on trans Reddit where they're like, what's going on? Why can't I get boners? Like, they haven't been told anything at all. Yeah, it kind of seems like the standard of care is like extremely variable. And it kind of seems like, I very much doubt that WPATH has any kind of method of enforcing anything, any way of like auditing any of these clinics. It doesn't seem great, you know what I mean? Like, this shit seems a bit out of control. Like, she can say that, oh, it's not a rush. It kind of seems like plenty of like clinics out there are treating it exactly the opposite. If you actually listen to like testimonials of detransitioners and stuff. But then this person wouldn't listen to those people, I wouldn't have thought. There's always a way. Oh, well, that person, because they're saying something convenient, oh, well, they're politically motivated. There's always a way out. It's so gross.
Should the process go awry? Or should the feelings change?
I don't deal with the clinic. I deal with the political aftermath of what you choose to do. I have gone down to DC 5 times at this point trying to come up with a strategy to counter these Trump EOs to destroy our healthcare, to destroy the dollars allocated for our research. I'm cleaning up this mess. So you may not want to answer it when I say, do you understand that the decisions WPATH is working is creating a political problem that is letting Republicans destroy our healthcare? But it's a real problem.
I don't agree. I think we've done things with an incredible amount of integrity. So I disagree.
Yeah, that's why so many countries are like turning their backs on you.
Failing.
I'd say no.
You're failing.
Incredible integrity.
let's talk about.
Oh, that's so not true.
Okay, then we
Brianna?
disagree.
Let's talk about the future. That's the whole point of the podcast. And thank you both for hanging in there. Let's talk about the future. What is, Brianna? You're two of the most important trans activists in the country and world right now.
Doesn't that say it all? Doesn't that say it all? Two of the most important trans activists in the country right now. Listen, we're all fucked. It's all fucked. Just, do you want to transition? Don't bother. It's all fucked. Don't worry about it. Just put that shit in the back of your head and repress it for the rest of your fucking life. It's all fucked.
What is the future, Brianna, when you look at the trans rights movement? What is an affirmative vision that you want to put out? And then, Marci, I'll ask you the same thing.
So I think that the fundamental problem with WPATH is it is an activist
WPATH is not the
organization.
enemy. Stop.
Jesus Christ, let us speak. Who's saying they're the enemy? Has she said they're the enemy? She's saying that there's some shit you do and advocate for that she's not down with. But we have to essentialize.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish what I'm saying. Please act like an adult. It's not funny. Your behavior here is
No. Come on.
embarrassing.
Everyone's doing their best. Keep going.
So my fundamental problem is I think
There's an expose called Trans Express, where a clinician in Quebec prescribed testosterone to an undercover reporter pretending to be a 14-year-old with an eating disorder within 9 months. Yikes. Is that on YouTube? Let me have a quick look. The Trans Express. Is it this one here? I'll have to save that.
WPATH, the thing that gave me the pathway to have a successful life, a good marriage, a good job, all that stuff. WPATH, used to be the Benjamins when I did it, has been ideologically captured. And is putting out policy proposals that there's no scientific evidence for, including the non-binary stuff, including the eunuch stuff, including like the children, which there's not the evidence that we've made the case for. I think we have activists that are out there talking to policymakers and saying, we got the evidence for this. It's dead. We're dead sure about it. And then I think there's a parallel right-wing project led by GenSpec, the awful people at GenSpec and SEGM, and, Manhattan Institute to a lesser extent, but primarily them, to go through and fact check all of this and create a political shitstorm about every part of it, because they're looking into your claims and they don't check out. So this relates to what I'm saying, Alex. The future of trans healthcare has got to be, we need some organization that is advocating for transsexuals that really cares about the science, that really cares about the things that we say being true.
Again, with the language policing, just stop. No one cares. If someone wants to call themselves a transsexual, just fucking let them.
And making that case to the public with integrity and without this clown show that's been going on. At the same time, we need a new generation of activists out there.
It's never going to happen. The whole thing is fucked, mate. Just ends back right wing, yeah, and it's Brianna Wu, you know what I mean?
That are willing to not message this as a fringe leftist issue. It is a problem that almost every single political trans person out there is on the fringe left, and most of them are communist. Something I talk a lot about is Israel policy. And one of the smart things that Jews have done here in the United States is they've made their civil rights as best as they can a nonpartisan issue. It's not left versus right. They'll talk to the right wing when they can. They'll talk to the left wing when they can. I want to do that with trans healthcare. This needs to be non-ideological, nonpartisan, talking to Republicans with respect and like they are adults. So I think the future of trans healthcare has got to be getting back to basics, getting away from these fringe politics, and stop.
Oh, Marci Bowers is complaining that transsexual is an old term, so she shouldn't say it, which, I don't know. I think all this lecturing people on their language constantly has been a dead thing for a long time. Like, the best thing you can do is just never do that, because people just get pissed off. There's just no need to. And, like, people call themselves transsexual nowadays because they want to move away from, like, the issues they see with transgender. That's their right. They want to reclaim a word. They can do that.
Stopping lying to people about what we know, because we don't know a lot about
that's a long statement.
So
can I?
That was Marci. Now, yes,
can I pick
you
up
can
on that?
both respond, and but also state your affirmative vision for where you think it should be going.
So, you know, you don't, as we used to say, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. WPATH was established in 1970.
No, you come up with a medical consensus that decides you should put the baby in the bathwater and fill it with testosterone.
Specifically because there were clinicians operating without any sort of standards or guidelines. So,
God, if that's why they started, then they have fucking failed. Seems like so much like crazy shit. You hear about so many clinics doing things that clearly aren't what Marci Bowers think they should be doing. But it kind of seems like there's fuck all they can actually do about any of it.
So it was convened as an evidence base, which means science and clinical experience. It's represented by
clinical experience isn't evidence, though.
Clinicians and scientists from around the world. These are not just.
Like if I'm to say, oh, from my experience, I think this will happen. That isn't actually evidence.
Fringe people. These are not extremists and activists. These are, for the most part, clinicians. There are Republicans and there are Democrats. I do agree with Brianna that we need, going forward, the clarity and the ability to talk to everyone is important.
I doubt she believes this. Like I'm hearing more of these like kind of more extreme TRA types. People like Katie Montgomery starting to talk more, oh, we need to have more conversations, we need to talk to more people, we need to do more debates and stuff. I don't think any of them actually fucking mean it. I don't see any of them putting themselves out there. Because there's so many people that would be willing to debate those kinds of people, but they won't do it, I don't think. Like Monty, I've been asking her about call-ins and stuff. I never hear back. But this is someone that talks about, oh, we need to have more conversations, we need to actually go into debates and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, are any of these people actually doing that shit? Like, I'd be willing to bet she probably thought this was going to be a different kind of conversation than what it ended up being.
There are...
And like, she threatened to leave this conversation multiple times when it got a bit more heated.
Very reasoned, thoughtful, well-minded people throughout the ideological middle.
Can I jump in here, Alex?
No, wait. I was just getting to my vision here. So my vision is that we see further coalescence of the major medical groups which have rallied around WPATH.
Yeah, the problem is people are not trusting them. How are you going to get people to trust them again?
Because they're looking at the same science you are and they come up with a different conclusion. Politically based reports like the CAST report notwithstanding. Sweden, which has been often...
Again, it's so easy. Just anything you don't like, oh, well, it's politically motivated. Because there's no political motivation on your side whatsoever. No, of course not.
Cited as a country where they've restricted trans care. What they've really done is they've just simply funded science where every person who is treated in adolescence is now part of research. And when that research...
Yeah, clinical trials, but they're not allowing it to the wider public.
Emerges, how are you going to react? Because it's probably going to be affirming that trans care saves lives.
Completely spitballing, doesn't know this. Saves lives. Can you say it saves lives because there's some mass hysteria where people are threatening to kill themselves if they don't get trans-affirming care?
Betters lives and serves a small part of
the problem is at the moment, a lot of the evidence isn't necessarily stacking up with this. There's some that say it improves mental health, there's some that say it doesn't.
The population that is...
And what about the Joanna Olson Kennedy thing as well? How come that got shut down? Didn't want to release it for fear of how it would be used politically. Would she have been saying that if it was finding like good mental health outcomes for treating them? I just don't know about that.
There's no threat to social order.
So I think this is a really good point to like draw the distinction.
Yeah, it's interesting how these studies are going to come out and support us. By the way, I think a similar thing has happened in the UK. We've had a clinical trial for puberty blockers. And now they're doing another one, but I don't think they ever released the findings from the first one. It's a bit odd. We'll have to see what that's all about, but...
Distinctions between the differences for...
Sometimes you got to sterilize a few thousand kids, you know. Marci Bowser, this entire conversation. Jesus.
For where we see trans healthcare.
Let's keep it on sort of...
Let's not insult WPATH anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That just doesn't help.
Hold on.
Well, she's criticizing. Like, this is a bit pathetic.
There's some accountability that needs to be there, but that's not my point.
I wish you'd
This is where I will talk to you literally anytime. Alex, please send her my number. Sure.
So let's do this. And first off, this is our final exercise, and it's how we end every podcast. It's called Steel Manning. But first, thank you. This was a difficult conversation. We're going to end on a strong note, but honestly, we need more of this. I think there are hard conversations that need to be had, and I just so appreciate both of you working through this. So I just want to say that. Now, the last thing we do is Steel Manning. So it's when you take your disagreement partner's arguments and you say them in the first person affirmatively in the best faith possible, just to show that you were listening, you understand, and that's it. So would one of you like to go first?
I would love to go first. And I will even add some more good faith context. Marci, like yourself, I am a public figure, and I understand what it's like to be under attack by all quarters. And I think a important background information for everything you said today, there has been a massive project to go after you personally in cruel ways that I've watched for a decade now. And I think that's really important. I understand how exhausting it is being in the crosshairs of these people. So that's my good faith steel man of just the general demeanor here. I think that you, as a clinician, have come into an organization that's like herding cats. And I think you've tried to make the best case you can with all these different groups.
That wasn't taking my side on anything.
Can you do first
Hold
person?
on, well, let me...
Okay.
Sure. And I think that you are saying that with the methods that you have, the Delphi approach to all of this, you feel like there is
not to all of this. But go ahead.
Oh, you got to let it. All right, you can grade it. You know what, Marci? You can give it an A, B, C.
Let me start.
Yeah, start over.
Let's see if I can
start over. First person.
Marci thinks that WPATH has done a great job with this.
I didn't say that.
The science is sound of it, and that by
You didn't say WPATH has done a great job. Fucking hell. Oh, there's all these like tacit admissions if you listen closely. What have we got? Like, she's basically admitted pretty much through this that a lot of this shit is very experimental and not necessarily based on almost anything. The cast review literally says as much, but then that's politically motivated, but is right. It isn't based on much. It isn't very evidence-based. Quite a lot of it does seem to be just like consensus of like higher ups who, I mean, if they're all captured a certain way, if they have some particular reason to push a certain thing, then what they say goes. There's nothing anyone else can do. And whether that's actually, whether the treatments they're pushing that they've decided by consensus are actually good for people, well, that kind of remains to be seen.
That said, WPATH is not the enemy.
Cohorts, she thinks that you think that WPATH is not the enemy? And I think you think that the strongest evidence that the WPATH is based in science is the length of that document. And I think you feel like it is an organization that has a lot of integrity.
All right, Marci, your turn. Your turn.
Well, I think there is overwhelming evidence for adult care, but
that's not even true either, by the way. There's not overwhelming evidence. The evidence is still conflicting. A lot of the studies and stuff are not high quality. We see other studies that suggest that post-op, people's mental health can even potentially get worse. There's not really much of a consensus on this. I don't see that I've based on the evidence and stuff, it doesn't really seem to come down one side or the other. It kind of seems like if it's very conflicting, then this is something that might help some people. I'm sure it does. I think it does. But then doesn't help others. And then it's like, well, what? It kind of seems like for some people, it's just kicking the can down the road. Oh, you think this is going to help you, but then you actually have all kinds of other stuff that you've been dissuaded from seeking help for because that's conversion therapy now, apparently.
But that some of the evidence for gender-affirming care in adolescence would be of lower grade, meaning individuals could get treated who shouldn't be treated, and that pop-up clinics, hormones on demand is not something that should be offered to the general public.
Yeah, because this is making it sound like this shit got out of control. Has WPATH been able to bring them under control, or has that more been what the government has been doing?
But I'm not going to agree with you that WPATH is the enemy.
Okay, that was sort of a steel man. That was sort of your own position. I feel.
Yeah, I don't think either of them managed to steel man the other in any way, shape, or form. But okay.
It was your own position, but it was a critical position, so it's an inflection. So, all right, this was really excellent. I will give you both an email so that you can continue it, because I do think you are very important voices, and I've learned an incredible amount today.
Hi, Amidoki. Hope you're good.
Just to revisit the original reason, both of us care very deeply
Yes.
about trans people getting the health care that they need. And again, it saved my life. And, Marci, again, thank you for the surgery you gave me. It radically improved my life. All of us want to get to the right answers, even if we don't agree on the problems.
Well, that means a lot to me.
I mean it.
And you're a very wise and sharply focused individual, and I hope that we can cross paths again sometime in the
Very much sound like you meant that, but okay.
future.
You can literally call me anytime.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Well, I give out I think I gave you my cell phone number. I've given out to every single patient for the last 23 years.
Oh, really? I'll go look at my.
You gotta go look it up.
Yeah. You have it.
I had to do to give my passport.
Take a look. It's probably still on your phone.
Same thing. All right. Thank you both.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex. And thanks, Bree.
Thank you.
There we go. Brianna Wu versus Marci Bowers. I don't know, we got some interesting admissions there. I think Marci Bowers looked pretty fucking horrible throughout that. But hey, I don't know. We wanna push for the status quo at a time where even the USA is turning its back on what WPATH wants to do.